Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Transatlantic Call-In Show. Today is Thursday, May 18th. It is 2 p.m. Central Time, and we are doing calls about anything and everything trans-related. So if you have maybe an uncomfy question that you can't ask someone in your life, or maybe you think trans care shouldn't be given to kids, or maybe you're an ally and you want to know how best to approach certain things, we would love to hear from you and talk to you and answer any and all questions you have. The number is 720-619-2288, and there's a link in the description so you can get your calls into us from anywhere. My name is Arden Hart, and with me today is my guest, Luxander. Oh, wrong side.
Hello. I'm Luxander,
Hey.
they, them pronouns. I have a streaming show that I do, and I've been friends with Jimmy for years, so I'm really excited to come on and chit chat and answer questions and like share the expertise a little bit, because I've been trans for like 14 years, and I've made it my career now, so I'm a professional.
Professional trans. Love it.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I was watching some of your content yesterday and earlier today again, and I've seen your content for a couple years now, but I think we also both got targeted by a particular streamer who I won't get into right at this moment because I'm not trying to do drama or anything like that. But anyway, yes. So I want to remind you guys that at the end of the show, we do read out super chats. Any super chats over $5, we will read out loud. So if you are too afraid to call, that is a way that you can get your questions into us and to support the show and all of our hosts here on the line. We would really appreciate it. But yeah, I want to actually talk a little bit more before we get over to our poll questions about you and your stuff. Because I saw recently you did a video about you are in Kansas, correct? And I saw that one was really just hit me hard because I'm in Texas. So it's like definitely feeling like, you know, wanting to hold on to the place that you live and kind of like believe in the ability for it to be survivable and like hanging on maybe for like the people who can't fight, and but also watching it slip through your fingers and like kind of like how that's been feeling for you.
Yeah, for context, for anybody in the chat, I live in Kansas. I have a teenage trans brother who lives in Missouri also, and he's like grandfathered in there, but he has elected to start rationing his medicine just in case. Like, he's on testosterone, and he has elected to take half the amount. Like, we've talked about it a bit, and I feel like I'm really proud of him for making that decision, but also it's really uncool that we have to do that.
Yeah.
And then, so I live in Kansas, and they recently passed a bathroom bill, like the worst bathroom bill that has successfully passed, except for Florida's one that they just passed. Like, I think that one is slightly more like they actually have the language for arrests in and everything. But in Kansas, they just were like, for all intents and purposes, like in restrooms, in locker rooms, in prisons, in schools, everywhere, they are sex segregated by your sex at birth. There's no language in the bill about how that's going to be enforced or whether it is actually a crime that is punishable by any specific punishments. Yeah, like, it's really, it's amazing that it passed in the first place. The governor vetoed it, and then they have a supermajority, which also is like a bad sign for any future legislation, since like having that veto-proof supermajority means like our heavily gerrymandered state gets to be dictated by a bunch of Republicans. You know, Kansas would actually be a pretty decent place to live if it weren't for that. And yeah, so I feel terrible about it. I mean, there's not really a good way to deal with it emotionally, I think. I'm hoping that the ACLU steps in is kind of that's where I'm keeping sane with it at the moment, because otherwise, personally, I don't really feel that attached to staying in the country, or rather, like, I do wish that I could be cool with the place where I was born. Like, I kind of just wish that I wasn't being forced in a situation where I have to find a different place where there's like better healthcare and access to public restrooms and things like this. Like, I don't love that those are considerations that I'm having to make. Even though maybe when I was a kid, I really wanted to move somewhere else. I really wanted to live in Seattle or something. Nowadays, I'm more like, I was kind of hoping to someday buy a house and plant some native grasses there. And now if I ever buy a house, those plains grasses will not be native there. That was a sad moment for me. Yeah, and like, I think for more than anything, though, I feel for like the young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
like I can't imagine what it would be like to be like, I just got on care, or I am just about to get on the care, and have it like taken away from you. And I also don't know how you can live in a place that feels that way about you. I grew up here, I was born here, I love living here, and it sucks that like I know now that there is like this motivation politically to the other thing about our bathroom law is that the way that it's written, it could make it impossible for you to change your driver's license gender marker.
Okay.
Yeah, because it says for all purposes of like collecting information, like data, you would need to have assigned at birth, kind of whatever. I can hear feedback. Is that me?
Yeah, I don't know if that was coming out of my end. I just turned off the audio on like all of my other sources to make sure, but uh
Okay.
yeah, hopefully that takes care of that.
Yeah,
But
I think it's okay now.
yeah, I definitely feel a lot of what you're talking about. I mean, and especially like, feeling for the younger generation, like a big part of why I ever started talking about trans rights was just kind of like reflecting on what my experience was like growing up and being like, uh, uh, there were good parts and there were bad parts for sure, but I just want the next generation of trans kids to have it a little bit easier than I did. And it's sad to say that I think they are objectively going to have it harder in a lot of cases and in a lot of places than many of us did. uh, I was accessing care as a minor in Vermont back like, God, I'm 27. So, well over a decade ago. And,
Yeah.
it was actually like not terrible. We still had the Harry Benjamin standards of care back then. So you had to be like, living openly as your gender for a period of time to even get like seen by an endocrinologist, and how to be an endocrinologist, not like a registered nurse or anything like that. So there were definitely more barriers, but there was definitely no like overarching bans like we were seeing today, and so that's definitely pretty scary. Um,
Yeah. We got a
but
tiny glimpse of like informed consent model. And then there's just like this intense backlash against that. And that's like hard to experience as well when, yeah, like you and I were younger and like my parents didn't know enough to get me the medical care and like therapy was kind of unaffordable and stuff. But then gradually, like trans acceptance started to happen. And now
yeah,
it's like worse than it has ever been in my lifetime in America, as far as I know. Like, and it's like soul crushing, honestly. Like it's pretty upsetting.
yeah, no, I mean, I apologize a little if I'm like
No,
getting
it's cool.
into
I'm
like the
like
worst parts of it, but like,
just
yeah,
right up top, Arden. Come on now. No, like I mean, it is like it is kind of one of those things that we have to grapple with as a community, and I
mhm,
do think that it's valuable to discuss strategies for how to cope with those things. Like that is something that I try to talk about on my show because I did 2 years of dialectical behavioral therapy, which is very skills oriented. And I think that a lot of that stuff is evidence based and useful in broader context as well. So like sometimes you need to distract yourself and sometimes you need to like specifically go seek out certain experiences like being around people who care about you and maybe doing something that has a physical result can make you feel better, even if it's just you made a
mhm.
cake. Like there's all kinds of different ways that we need to approach this, and like fundamentally building community is like I think the most important thing. And I always find that kind of difficult to find that in-person community, but if you live in a place where things are unsafe, you need to know your neighbors. Maybe a good idea to know your neighbors.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that. And I think it's also a large portion of our audience is cis. And so like when I'm at like atheist conventions and stuff, usually the people who are coming up to me aren't trans people, they're cis people who are like, "Oh my
Mm,
God, like hearing X, Y, and Z on your show is like really helpful." And so I think as painful as it is, sometimes talking about this stuff can, I mean, while I'm sure a portion of our audience who is cis is probably going to be voting in favor of our rights anyway, I think it's still helpful to kind of push the, how serious things are and maybe encouraging
mhm.
them to like having these conversations on their own lives and in their own relationships. Um,
Yeah.
but
The
yeah.
personal experience can change people's minds, I think. Like, if you don't know someone who is experiencing that, it's easier for you to kind of think of it esoterically. Um,
Mhm.
so, like, yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about trans kids. Like, okay, I could be an actor and any scene that I have to cry in, because literally all I have to do is think about trans kids and how the world sucks for them and like how uncool it is. And like, it's there already. I'm like, I can cry at a moment's notice over this because it really like, I feel strongly about helping other trans people. And it's like, I think we are missing something when we don't have cis people getting to like actually witness that. That's one of the frustrations of being trans specific in my content, is that there is sort of a limit to that reach. And like, I'm gender ambiguous enough that when I try to talk about politics more generally, people are like, what's wrong with your voice? And it's distracting from the main point that I'm trying to get across, you know? So like,
Sure.
it's hard to get out of that space and get that information out to folks who I'm trying to convert or convince or mobilize past the just voting, you know, trying to get them to do something more direct and involved could be like a goal that I just can't get to. I just am talking to my own insular, mostly trans audience most of the time.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So every week here we do a poll to kind of start off the conversation and maybe give callers something to talk about if they need some motivation for some conversational points. So we're going to talk about last week's poll. So this one was, do trans men experience misogyny? And I think we can probably generalize that to like the trans masc experience, generally speaking. So 85% of our audience said yes, and 15% said no. And I actually haven't looked yet at why they said no, because I'm kind of curious what the reason would be. Do you have any thoughts and feelings on this?
I love that this is what we have to discuss. I was checking before we started. I was like, what was the question from this week that we're going to talk about? And this is perfect. My experience is like kind of similar to that of a trans man. Like I, broadly speaking, consider myself to be transmasculine, and my transition at times, you know, I was watching the trans men and talking about their 6 months on T kind of stuff. Like that was mirroring my experience. And this is like a tricky conversation because I don't think it's possible to ask this question, do trans men experience misogyny, without there being like an echo of the reverse question of, do trans women experience male socialization and male privilege? And like, that's a trickier thing because a lot of women feel like, you know, they were socialized as a feminine boy, which is like different. And like, they knew that there was something off about themselves in that way when they were younger. And so it's like, I would not say that male privilege is necessarily the right thing to echo against this, but like, it's definitely male socialization to be made fun of for being a sissy, whether you're actually trans or not. But yeah, for trans men experiencing misogyny, I think that 15% of no's is comprised of people who think that testosterone is like a magic potion that just kind of instantaneously makes you grow a beard. A lot of trans men don't pass. Like, yes, testosterone is a highly effective. It changes everyone from being female to being male. Like fundamentally, that's what it does, regardless of when in your life you get exposed to it. So, yeah, like it is a powerful thing, but it doesn't change everything, and it doesn't change everything overnight. There's plenty of like transitionary stages where you get like, okay, you're experiencing more run-of-the-mill misogyny before you start testosterone. And then as you are on testosterone, you get, you know, people asking if you're a smoker. Like they're like, are you sick? Why does your voice sound like that? And then eventually maybe you do have that beard, but you still have breasts because you need $10,000 to get top surgery. And yeah, so like you're experiencing maybe more like anti-lesbian sentiment during that time. And yeah, like, so do trans men experience misogyny? Like pretty much universally, all trans men have experienced misogyny at some point. The question, I guess, is, do they stop experiencing misogyny when they transition? Or do you ever find in this question that some people seem to have like an esoteric, it's the essence of your soul kind of view toward it? Like if you're a man, you can't experience misogyny. It's misdirected misogyny. It's like, okay, well, what functional difference is there? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I've heard that as much on the trans masculine side, but kind of like you were talking about on the echoed, do like trans women benefit from male privilege or whatever? I think that's where I hear a lot more of that. Like you were always a woman and it was sort of misdirected. It's like socializing a young girl as a boy, like that kind of like thing. And I get the point, but I do think I'm more aligned with kind of the 85% here and kind of what you're saying, where I'm like, sure, like definitely male socialization didn't hit me or affect me in the same way that would have affected my cis male peers, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's traumatizing in a lot of ways for me, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen or that there weren't ways in which it did impact me as like male socialization. I think it's kind of hard to at that point when you're pulling those things apart. I do think it's kind of getting to what you're talking about, where there are like these really esoteric differences that I'm not sure are really meaningful when we're talking about like actual real world experiences of these
Yeah.
things. But oh, we didn't get to the second poll. But yeah, so this is last week's poll. So this is the new poll. And I think we can kind of generalize this to all states where these sort of things are happening. But so the question is, should various industry and community event organizers cease all operations and expos in Florida as a form of protest? And this is kind of building off of this notion of the anti-immigration laws that were passed in Florida, and protests are being made where there's like food supply lines that are not reaching Florida. And for me personally, I'm a reptile breeder and hobbyist, and there's a lot of reptile expos that happen in Florida, and I'm an adult entertainer. There's a lot of adult entertainer expos and events that happen in Florida. And now these places are not safe for trans people in a lot of cases. I think Florida is probably the worst example, where it's like, a medical employee can discriminate against you and not give you care, which could, be fatal in some cases, just on the basis of religion. And, you could be getting arrested for using the bathroom and things like this. Like, there's a lot of reasons why it is now dangerous for trans people and LGBT people in general to go to Florida. And so when we're holding these major industry events here, atheist events are often in Florida as well, because it's the pretty sunshine state. It's so fun to go to,
Any time of year. Yeah.
right. It excludes queer people to have these events here. It makes us not as safe as the rest of everyone else attending. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to know what the community thinks about this has been on my mind a lot. I mean, like, XBiz does like big events in like Miami and stuff all the time. And like I said, there's lots of reptile expos that happen all throughout Florida that are like a really big deal. It's where you meet a lot of people and like actually make connections with other people in the industry. And it's just a little bit, it's the, definitionally like oppressive. Like, we are not able to access the same level of connection within our industries as cis people because these places are not safe for us. So yeah, I kind of want to know what you think about that.
Yeah. I think mainly, like, yes, it is inaccessible. Like, it's an accessibility issue is kind of what you're invoking there with like, we have fewer career opportunities if we can't go to the meet and greet thing. Also, if you're medically vulnerable and places are not taking any COVID precautions, like disabled people are also having those same kind of problems. The main reason why I think that various industry and community event things should end in states like Florida and Texas is because that's the only thing that matters to these people is money. Like, so if you have tourism business that doesn't want to go to your state anymore, or if you have I think the Space Force, I just saw someone saying that like the Space Force is considering moving to Alabama, and one of the people who is like advising on that decision spoke in Alabama about one of these gender-related laws and was like, my advice to the US government on this is partially dependent on whether you're going to pass this law or not. So essentially, like, we can threaten these states' economies by saying like, we are going to not bring business there. It's like a big deal if an Amazon warehouse opens. I'm not saying that Amazon was one of the companies making a statement. I'm just saying, as an example, like, if you have a big thing open there, then there's a bunch of jobs. They're paying taxes. They care about those things. And so I believe personally that that's the only argument that could possibly work to sway like those conservatives who have somewhat of a moral quandary with young people getting hormone blockers and stuff like that, but who are not actually fascists. Because there are some Republicans who I think aren't actually part of that fascist contingent. And those people are potentially folks who you might want to alienate from the more radical aspects of the party. And like the economic argument, I believe, is one of the most effective ways to do that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, I think it's kind of inspiring seeing some of the protests going on in Florida regarding like immigration laws and stuff like that. I also
Just
think it
empty
goes to show
groceries.
how like, yeah, right. I mean, and that's a unfortunate consequence of these sort of protests. But like, I also think it goes to show how intertwined a lot of our fights are as minority groups across the U.S., especially right now. It feels like more than ever our really these battles need to be held together and hand in hand because I think we're all being attacked from the same side and we all benefit from the same sort of policies. And so really advocating together is going to be really important for our future. But with all that said, we have a ton of callers on the line, and I would like to get to them all because they all sound so lovely. So, if you're ready, we're gonna just dive right in.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
So, first up, we've got Puck in Ohio, and I think this is the Puck that I know. Puck, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Arden, it has been far too long.
It has been. What's going on?
So for disclosure for the audience, Arden and I, we've had our run-ins, we've had our conversations, we've been on a couple of shows together, and I've even had ice cream with Arden.
That's true. And done an escape room
Yeah,
together.
okay. So and also just for the sake of transparency to the audience, I am poly and agender.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
So, what's your
So
topic? What did you want to talk about?
I would like to talk about unjustified fears within these progressive spaces. So I am the moderator and admin of a poly Discord where there is a, in my opinion anyway, disproportionate amount of fear regarding the potential discrimination against poly people, which is causing people to have some distress and difficulty in coming out. And they're worried, for example, that somebody will find out they're poly and will have Hamilton Family Services called on them to have their children taken away. Now, you know me, I'll do the math and I'll do the homework. So I actually did look up and talk to somebody who works at Hamilton County Family Services and found out that unless there is any other evidence of abuse or neglect going on, that just the fact that a child is in a poly family is not enough of a reason for them to do an investigation. So that is like demonstrably false already, but it seems to be okay within progressive spaces to justify and even promote this fear. And I'm wondering if that's helpful or if it would be more helpful to challenge these fears and say, well, according to the research, this doesn't actually happen. I can understand why the fear is there, and I understand it's not going to just go away immediately. But it's also never, there's no evidence of it ever happening, and no evidence then that it's going to happen to you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You go ahead. You sound like you want to jump in.
I was just thinking. So you said that it hasn't been in your research indicated that there are instances where a child is removed only because of the polyamorous relationship and that there has to be some kind of coexisting problem. Was that correct?
Yes, but I also add the asterisk to this that I only talked to one person informally who I know works for the agency, but was not speaking officially for the agency at the time.
Okay. So I would be interested in seeing if there, like, what kind of coexisting issues we might see in situations where there is scrutiny. Like, I don't really know because I've never experienced like this particular interaction. Like, I have had experiences with Child Protective Services. My family has had experiences with them, just not about this particular thing. Now, what I will say is that I do believe that there is such a thing as folks who are vindictive enough to trigger an investigation into a family's situation, whether that's because they're polyamorous or because they're gay or because they're trans. And then once you're in an investigative situation, things which are perhaps not ideal, but also are fairly normal within families will then be criminalized because you can't say, oh, we're taking away the kids because you're gay or because you're polyamorous or because you're trans. But having that increased scrutiny can put you in a situation where the state is getting involved in a situation that they might not have had any cause to get involved in otherwise, you know? And this echoes some situations I've seen from Native American women who have a heavy amount of scrutiny on them with regards to like, oh, did you miss this postpartum appointment? Well, like less than a week after your baby was born. Well, that's going to trigger an investigation, and we're going to find out whether or not you're an unfit parent to your other children. Like some groups are more heavily scrutinized than others, and this tends to fall along certain lines of marginalization. I guess the question just becomes, is anti-polyamorous sentiment something significant enough to trigger this kind of moral outrage that then weaponizes the bureaucratic like mechanisms against those people, right?
Yeah, and apparently the answer is at least not in Hamilton County, Ohio, because I did think about what you said, and so I went to everybody on my poly Discord, it has several hundred members, and I said, what is the worst social or professional consequence that's ever happened to you for coming out as poly? And then also to someone you actually know. Not just, we've heard a story of someone who, I read an article about somebody in another state, but what is the worst that's actually happened to you or somebody you know? And out of hundreds of people, literally 0 stories. Literally 0. I didn't know what to make of that other than to say, maybe this fear, I understand where it's coming from, but maybe it's not rational and it's not founded.
Yeah, I think there's a difficult intersection here, right? Because I definitely agree. Like, it's important not to over exaggerate potential dangers or fears, because tensions are so high. I think it's really important that people feel grounded and safe in their families and their communities, because that allows them to be like, better advocates for themselves and for their kids and for their community and yada yada yada. All that's true, but I also think that it's interesting that none of them had any particular stories about rejection or marginalization on the basis of being poly. Because I mean, just interpersonally, I feel like I people love to talk. If you mention that you're poly, people love to talk about it, and they love to share their opinions and feelings about it. So I don't know. It's hard to say what the right move is here. I think it's justified for people to notice the increasing levels of like, Christian nationalism and white supremacy, like really taking stranglehold over our country, and to think like, oh, well, when it comes down to it, we're obviously not going to fall on their side of this issue if it comes down to affecting us. Because I think that's probably true, right? If they decide to pick up a mantle against, certain sort of family arrangements, I think it's pretty obvious that polyamory would not fall within their acceptable bounds of like acceptable family arrangements. But if it's not currently a threat, I think it is important to be reasonable about where we're devoting that energy. So yeah, I get it.
We're flying under the radar right now. I get it.
I think there's more interpersonal issues than there are professional issues. Like, I think that with anti-polyamorous sentiment, like, folks feel like there's a lot of problems with it because they have so many accusations of cheating and stuff from their family and from their friends who are judgmental. But I really do think that if we were to look at professional like ramifications, I really doubt that there are people getting fired because they are polyamorous. Like, notwithstanding any like gayness that is intersecting with that. Like, if you're heterosexual and polyamorous, I feel like they feel persecuted in a way that they aren't actually, because there's a difference between that interpersonal friction and like actual systemic difficulty,
Mm-hmm. All right, no, I'm just wondering where this is, because as much as we see fear mongering, unjustified, irrational fear mongering on the other side, I can also look at some progressive circles and progressive communities and see some of that. And I'm wondering, like, is it worth calling out? Because a bad argument should be stamped out, right? Like, I think we would all, as skeptics, agree to that. But at the same time, if it's serving some purpose, like if it's giving us a little bit of caution or making us look at something a little bit more, like, for example, I can give you two a number, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If I say 482. Which is supposedly the number of anti-LGBTQ bills that are in state senates right now.
Oh, it's going up every day. I couldn't possibly tell you on a given day.
Okay.
Right.
No, because you know me, I'll do the math and I actually look some of this stuff up, and I get that a lot of people don't have the knowledge or the resources or, quite frankly, the time or energy to look this up. But for those that do, like, is it worth going back to our circles and saying, hey guys, I know that this is the word that's out there, but this is what I found in my own investigations.
I think that's fine to do. I I definitely would take a very different approach with those people than I would with like conservatives advocating for like, banning healthcare for trans minors, right? Like I think if there were like polyamorous people who are ostensibly leftist, I'd probably be like, hey, you guys, I understand where this fear is coming from. I think it's totally like I understand, I empathize deeply with why you're feeling this way, but I think it's, you can have that conversation in a thoughtful and empathic way. Um, I don't, I would need to hear a really compelling case, I feel like, on utility alone for like allowing an irrational belief based on utility alone. Uh, it could exist for sure, but I feel like that alone is not sufficient for me. But yeah, I think with regard to like this sort of situation, yeah, I think how you're handling it sounds pretty much like what I think would be reasonable, is just kind of responding to like, hey, like, here's the situation we're in. It doesn't mean that it won't change in the future, and that being like prepared and like mentally thinking about these things isn't maybe like useful in the sense that like, so when things do happen, you actually have like a game plan or whatever of like advocacy, or starting ahead of time and making sure that these like, rights for polyamorous people are secured before this is even a question. But yeah, that said, I don't know. I think I would definitely just handle it a lot more gently than I would a lot of the other issues that I think are more pressing and more immediately harmful. Yeah.
There are things
Polly's
to be
flying under
alarmist
the radar
about,
right
and that's
now.
not one of
Nobody's
them.
coming after us. Yeah.
Right.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a great show.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. See you later. All right. Awesome. Okay, so before we move on to the rest of the callers, we do have a few more announcements to hit. I want to remind you guys that we have a Patreon, and that is one of the best ways to support the channel. So if you go to patreon.com/calltheline, that is a way that you can support the whole network and all the hosts here. It really goes a long way to allowing us to keep doing all these awesome productions. And we're starting the debate shows, and there have been like game shows talked about and all these awesome things. And the only way we can do that is with support. So if you are able to and willing, please check out those links. It would really mean a whole lot. And then while Transatlantic is inarguably the best show on the line, I mean, obviously, there are other shows that are inferior to us that you can watch on the line if you feel so inclined. For example, on the Sunday show, you can catch Jimmy and Matt most Sundays at 2 p.m. on Sunday, Central Time, talking about religion. Then we've got Skep Talk this coming Monday at 6 p.m. with Forrest Valkai and Erica Gutsick Gibbon. So I'm producing that show. I'm buckling in for it to be like an 8-hour show, because I know both of them can talk forever on biology and evolution, and the audience loves it. So I'm prepared. Then Tuesday, we have our second ever episode of Dying Out Loud with David Warnock and guest Matt Dillahunty. Love Dave Warnock. His message, I think, is really huge and really buckles down to something like, when we're not talking about, politics and the state of the country and things like this, some of those more integral issues about like death as secular people and like how we talk about that and valuing life as secular people. I think those are really awesome conversations, and almost nobody does it better than Dave. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Wednesday at 7 p.m., we've got The Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Lewis, special guest. I love Aaron. She's so funny and awesome. She's a great writer, and I think you guys will love her. So check that out. And before you come back here next Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Time again with Katy and Dr. Ben. But with all of that rambling, we have quite a few callers still on the line. This next one might be a little spicy, so I'm like, deep breath. Let's take Pamela in Victoria, Australia. Pamela, you are live on the line. What's going on? What do you want to talk about today?
Hey there. I don't know if you remember me from last time, but yeah, I did. We were talking about me. Sorry?
I was just saying, yes, I do sort of remember our conversation, I think.
Yeah. Pronouns were used. That's pretty accurate. So yeah. What was I saying?
Do you want me to read what the call screener wrote? Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so I guess what we talked about last time was the whole body modification, and I guess last time I was on, there was a big emphasis on the idea that being trans is not a mental illness, or not like an illness of any kind. So it seems to me, if that's the case, it's a bit of a double standard to have a situation where it's someone who is like not trans identified, if they want to modify their body, like a biological woman who wants to get breast implants, they have to pay for it themselves, whereas like someone who's like biologically male identifies as a woman, they're, in my country at least, or my state, their surgeries are paid for by the state. That seems like a double standard to me.
Must be nice. So I in most cases, I mean, there are some surgeries for trans people that are covered in most instances, I think, in the US, but a lot of surgeries like breast augmentation is not covered in a lot of instances, facial feminization surgery. I don't know, Lex, if top surgery for trans masks is like how difficult coverage is for that procedure.
It depends. I mean, our privatized system means that it's, you know, there's not like a national standard. So it like you might have to spend 3 years convincing an insurance company to cover care that they say is covered within their plan. So yeah, I think that the conflict here is the idea that like tax money, that like Medicaid is covering this. So being trans isn't like a mental illness in and of itself. The feelings of distress that we have are because of like the dissonance between how other people are interacting with us versus how we exist in our own internal space. Now, something can cause distress in that way without inherently being a mental illness in the way that, like, you know how like homosexuality used to be a mental illness in the DSM, like a diagnosable mental illness. And we've just kind of come to understand that there is simply a difference in some people's brains, basically, that like causes these sort of minor differences. Kind of like, you know, you prefer chocolate over vanilla, maybe. Like there's just stuff in your brain that makes you tend to be toward one way or another on things. And I personally don't think that gender is all that different from like just a way of being. And it just so happens that it is like denied often. I feel like if you were systematically denied something as integral as your gender, like, I don't know, if you were gaslit about your skin color your entire life, you know, like that would be equally distressing, if a little bit different in how you experience it. But like, yeah, so we're treating that conflict, like we're trying to resolve that conflict. And that's why gender affirming care is like the evidence-based practice, because what we're trying to resolve there is like the feelings of distress at the dissonance. And so once your body is resolved and you're socially transitioned, usually those two things kind of go in hand, then you feel more affirmed. Now, what is a more interesting way to go with this question is cisgender people's gender dysphoria valid? Because you're talking about breast augmentations, and there is kind of this difference in how we treat this right now, where the distress at the not feeling like a woman enough that a trans woman experiences has been given some degree of validation, and some medical people will say, okay, well, that's not cosmetic. You know, there's some deep, earnest desire in there. Personally, I don't really think there's a fundamental difference between a trans person feeling like I'm not a man enough because I don't have a penis versus a cisgender man saying I'm not man enough because I don't have a beard and I can't grow muscles. So we do give cisgender men low doses of testosterone to boost that. And the question, I guess, becomes, do we think that that should be considered medically necessary care? Unpopular opinion, perhaps. Maybe so. Maybe we should have that be similarly treated gender affirming care. Thoughts?
Yeah. I definitely think if the evidence supported that giving cis people access to breast augmentation or testosterone or like hair transplants or whatever sufficiently improve their quality of life, where we're seeing like more satisfaction with life, lower instances of like depression and anxiety, and like more productivity in like their workplaces and their communities, I don't see any reason why that should not be viewed in the same light as gender affirming care for trans people that would be covered by insurance programs personally. But I don't know, how do you respond to that, Pamela? Because I feel like that was kind of your question. Like, well, if you can do it for trans people, why not for cis people? And we're saying, yeah, do it for cis people. Like, how does that land with you?
I guess that's consistent. It seems like, I guess for me, I would go in the opposite direction of like, nobody needs this stuff. But I know it seems like a bit of an extreme position to give everybody, like, you seem to be saying that anyone who wants to change their body in any way through like surgeries or hormones or whatever should just get that provided to them for free by the state. That seems like
Yeah,
it would
absolutely.
be quite an extreme change to society. Like, can you see some potential negative like implications to that?
Absolutely.
No.
Well, I can think of one specific.
Oh,
I think-
gender, yeah, like dysmorphia maybe. Yeah, and like that intersection of like actual body dysmorphia and like addiction to surgery maybe.
Well, a little bit of that. I mean, that's definitely relevant. I mean, because, you know, the indications of treatment for body dysmorphia are different from gender dysphoria for sure. But also there's like the, you know, the implications of the culture in which somebody is getting these procedures and sort of like, are we trending towards like certain images or aspirations due to like cultural influences? I think those are important conversations to be had. But that said, I don't think that should exclude people from access to those surgeries. I personally, I am very pro bodily autonomy. I think people should be able to do with their body whatever they want. And if that means modifying it to whatever degree they seem appropriate, we can always after the fact talk about like, hey, why did you seek, you know, this thing over this other thing? And like, what kind of influences could there be? Sure, there's a conversation to be had there, but fundamentally, I don't think that anyone has the right to stop you from accessing that treatment, especially if it's going to improve your quality of life, regardless of like the cultural implications of that. But I think there are important conversations to be had for sure. Just like the media we consume, like I'm not saying anybody should stop watching, you know, violent movies or violent video games, but we can talk about like the cultural implication that has and like maybe why we are into why those are so highly sought after. And like, yeah, this is, I feel like there is this impetus to be like, well, they could be, you know, getting surgery because there's like these Eurocentric standards and they all want the like the same little button LA nose. And sure, that's a meaningful conversation to be had. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that that person shouldn't be able to access that surgery just because, you know, we might have some personal aversion to their motivation or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, because it's interesting because I also want to point out that you were saying, you know, you would go the opposite direction because you don't think anyone needs this stuff. But I mean, that's just not true, right? The evidence clearly seems to indicate that at least for trans people, accessing gender affirming care takes our quality of life and puts it equivalent to cis peers. Like there are numerous studies that show this and that, you know, decreasing depression and all these things. So it's clearly not true that nobody needs it. Some people clearly do need this care. But I think it is an interesting conversation about like, you know, where that ethical line is for sure.
I think there's a question between want and need where some folks think that like, okay, well, you want something and that's not the same thing as needing something, and that there's a burden of proof where you have to demonstrate that you need it. Like that's what the gender dysphoria diagnostic process is about, is we have to prove that we need it and it's not just that we want it. And I guess it just like, that's a matter of perspective on what the barrier is for what counts as like an adequate amount of distress in order to deserve this care. But yeah, I will sort of on board and say like, I agree that there are some concerns that you could have. Like, I know that there are models on Instagram who get work done on their face and they don't necessarily disclose, or they get like a BBL and so they don't disclose, and people get this unrealistic idea of what being a human being is like the shapes and stuff that go into it. If it's a prepackaged surgical result, then yeah, that's going to potentially like increase interest in getting more and more procedures done to look like that. And like, I think that it's healthy to have some amount of skepticism toward that process, especially because of the enormous amount of regret involved with rhinoplasties, as you mentioned before. Like rhinoplasty is a very high regret rate type of surgery. So yeah, I would say that, you know, if regret is one of our concerns as well, that is something that would be worthy of being a little bit more skeptical about. And maybe I can see there being concern about protecting vulnerable people from, you know, getting a surgery that they regret, like getting their nose changed to match the celebrity and, you know, all the other beautiful women. And yeah, like beauty standards complicate that for sure.
Yeah, I guess so. You've talked. Did you want me to
go ahead.
can I interject or?
Go for it.
Yes, you've talked about, I guess, the cause of somebody getting these procedures. I was thinking more like what would happen if you, because you seem to be advocating like for a system where everyone can just get whatever they want from paid for by the government, like for free, no questions asked, right? That seems like something that's just gonna explode the number of people wanting this stuff just by itself. Like, we're gonna end up with a system where everybody's doing this all the time. And like, if there's no, like you say, that you talked about the difference between want and need, like the government is always distinguishing between want and need. Like, it's not providing us with everything we want, no questions asked. It's providing what we need, because it's not economically sustainable for taxpayers to just fund everything that someone might want, whether that's surgery or just any other thing that they might want. Like, you have to draw a distinction between want and need.
Yeah, I think so. You were talking about like you thought our position was, and maybe Lux does feel this way, I don't know, but that it was like no questions asked. And I don't think I would advocate for a no questions asked scenario. I think it's perfectly reasonable to like investigate to some degree why people are seeking this procedure, and to maybe talk about, I know it's an unkosher word in trans communities, but gatekeeping,
A little bit of
to some
gatekeeping.
degree.
Yeah.
There's times where it's appropriate, I think, but I kind of want to like ask though, like, okay, so what if we were in a situation where it was financially viable to let people modify their body however they want, no questions of need, no questions asked? What would be wrong with that?
That's a bit of a crazy hypothetical, I guess.
It doesn't really matter
It
how
would
crazy it
be
is, right?
like,
It's the point of a hypothetical.
sorry?
Is that it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter how crazy it is, right? That's a hypothetical.
Well, I think a lot of people would feel uncomfortable with that, because like everyone would be just their bodies completely artificial. Like, I think that weirds some people out.
But does it matter?
And
Does
like
it
it
weird
would
people
be,
out?
but also I think there'd be like a coercive aspect to it in a way. It's like, I don't want to go on social media, really. I don't like social media, but everyone's on it. So how can I survive without it? Like, if you get everyone doing breast implants and stuff, I gotta do them, or else I'm like, whatever, not attractive. Like, I think that's what would happen if everyone's doing them, if it's just that ubiquitous.
That may be, but I feel like that's a more compelling argument to me. I'm not sure it's sufficient to like undermine people's bodily autonomy, but that's a more compelling argument to me than it weirds people out. Because like, it weirds me out when people like do lots of things, but I'm not going to stop people from doing things that weird me out, because I'm not going to infringe on their bodily. Personally, as a freedom-loving American, big advocate for freedom, I support bodily autonomy, and I think really, I think that's what this question comes down to is like your ethical system. And for me, as a humanist, bodily autonomy is really at the center of, I think, the humanist ethical framework, which is that, you know, so long as you're not impeding on my right to bodily autonomy and my freedoms, you have the right to do whatever you want with your body. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no afterlife. There is just this one life to live. And I'm not going to be impeding people from doing everything they can to find happiness and satisfaction and connection and community within this system. Even if I don't necessarily understand the methods by which they're going about that, as long as it's not infringing on my freedom and rights.
Wait, so is your idea of bodily autonomy, the government pays for anything someone wants? Because my idea of bodily autonomy would be like, the government doesn't prevent you. I don't think the government has to give you all this stuff for free. That's not how it usually works.
Nope.
Well, Pamela, you're kind of exercising what to me feels like a crazy hypothetical as an American, because we don't have government supported healthcare here. So
yeah,
like, if you're asking the question, like, if you want to have like a more broad discussion about healthcare in general, like, I would say the United States broadly fails its citizens by not providing state-sponsored healthcare for every kind of thing that you might need. So like, we have like an entire conversation that needs to happen before, if we engage with this hypothetical. So it's like, do I think that all gender affirming care should be free, provided by the government? Yes, but that's built on a foundational belief that I believe that all medical care should be basically on demand. Like, should I need to prove to a doctor that my husband doesn't want babies before I have a hysterectomy? Like, why should someone who does not live my life is not living in my body, why should they be making those choices? And like, why should I as a transgender person need to appeal to cisgender gatekeepers? Because let's not pretend like trans people are the ones who wrote the standards of care. Why should I have to appeal and prove to a cisgender person that I need the medical care that I'm saying that I need, or that I simply want it and maybe that should be good enough? Like, if you want to have a breast reduction because your back hurts sometimes, why should you have to medically prove and have a doctor check you out and confirm that you're in pain, instead of you just being able to say, I'm in pain and I want this breast reduction and I need it for my quality of life? You know, there are broader questions to be asked about all kinds of aspects of the medical industry and the profiteering and, you know, who should pay for it, all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, this is like a pretty broad conversation. So if, like, for Americans, like, it's just so far out there, this idea that the government is, oh, you know, your lifestyle is just being supported by taxpayer money. Like, no, it really broadly isn't. And there is a lot of gatekeeping involved. If you are on public assistance, you do have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you need this care, or they will not pay for it. And they only work with certain surgeons. So you might be incredibly limited in your options for even what kind of surgery you can get, because travel might be involved in this kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I also want to point out, Pamela, that this is not me trying to like slight you or anything, but when we're talking about like bodily autonomy, we're talking about the right to, like, you are the sole governor of your body and what happens to your body. And when we talk about that, you go into these hypotheticals about the government paying for I think Lux did a great job breaking that down. Sorry, I've been saying Lux. I don't know if you're cool with me shortening
No, that's cool.
your name.
We're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they did a great job breaking that down into like, you know, what the reality of that situation is, and like the government's not paying for anything. Well, not very much anyway in the U.S. in the way of gender affirming care. But it's like you derail into this like hypothetical, like ridiculous future where the government's just paying for everything willy-nilly and there's just endless pockets or whatever. And I feel like that is kind of a way of sidestepping the real question we're asking, which is like, do people, or should people, like an ought to have the right to do whatever they want to their body? Like,
should the government have the right to tell you no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're talking about the negative right to do it without government interference, then yes. But you did, like, you're saying I'm putting this, like, I think it was you who presented the hypothetical situation of everything's like available and you can just get it. So I was responding to that hypothetical.
Do you know why I did that?
Like,
do you know why I posed that hypothetical? Yeah. It wasn't because I was trying to get you to aspire towards a future where the government pays for all healthcare. It was because I was trying to identify where your ethical line is on bodily autonomy. It wasn't meant to ask you like your political position. It was meant to, based on your answer, that would tell me where you fall ethically on the issue of bodily autonomy, right? Because if you say, you know, all medical things aside, the government just hypothetically can pay for everything, and you still say, no, people shouldn't be able to access whatever care they want, that tells me that you have an ethical issue with the concept of bodily autonomy in and of itself, indistinct from the governments or the system it exists in, which is why I was trying to ask you that question. It was not a
part of the hypothetical. I'm going to respond. If you make it part of the hypothetical,
Pamela, do you know what okay, I'm genuinely not trying to be condescending when I say this.
Okay.
But when somebody is posing you a hypothetical to identify your moral or ethical frameworks, the idea is not that every part is important. It's specifically trying to identify, aside from real world contingencies, what your actual ethical framework is. Like, if I could be the maker of a new world, right? Sure, we can talk about how I would build, you know, healthcare systems or whatever, making it free for everyone, because that would be great, right? Hypothetically. But that's not the world we live in. So I want to ask you about, I was posing that question to identify your actual ethical framework that you have, because that tells me how you're interacting with the real world now. It was not about the politics. I'm sorry if that was confusing, but that's not the purpose of a hypothetical, especially one like that.
Okay, can I rewrite your hypothetical a bit?
Sure.
Okay, so if it's a scenario where, I don't know, everyone is super rich and able to pay for their own surgeries themselves, fine, do whatever.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to identify. So we actually agree on the issue of bodily autonomy then. So I
guess
so
defined as a negative right, yeah.
Great. That's awesome. That's what I was trying to identify. And that's what I assumed is the case. Because most people in the modern world, I think if you really press them on an ethical issue with hypotheticals like this, would probably end up answering similarly to you and I. So when you're asking, what is your justification for treating trans people with like body modifications and things like this, your issue isn't actually anything to do with changing their body. Your issue is about like healthcare systems and whether or not, like, I think Lux pointed this out right early on in the conversation, like pinned it on the head. Your real issue is about whether or not taxpayers should be in any part responsible for trans healthcare, which is an interesting conversation. I just want to note that it's different from what the original question was.
Well, I guess, yeah, because I was identifying a double standard. I didn't know you were going to go in the direction of everyone should have free boob jobs. But, like, I think for me, it's a question of if it's not a need, like if you're going to say it's just a preference, I don't think, because I'm not, like, against public health care. I just think public health care should be for things you can prove that you need, because that's what's
Can I ask you a question, Pamela? I got
Yeah.
a question for you, Pamela. So let's
Sure.
just say that we're in a future where we have healthcare for everybody, right? Everything, and we're having this conversation. We have universal healthcare. Now we're deciding what should be covered and what shouldn't be covered. Okay. So you think that gender affirming care is more of like an I want this, or at least maybe you wouldn't say that about hormones, but you might say that about like surgeries or whatever. So because I'm not going to pinpoint like your view on that. I'm not sure where exactly you are on. Actually, that's a question before I move on. Do you think that hormones are one of those things that you wouldn't want to be taxpayer covered?
I think anything that I consider like cosmetic, where the goal is like
Cosmetic.
to alter someone's appearance, but yeah, there's nothing seriously wrong with their body.
Then I'm ready. I'm ready to continue with this hypothetical. Okay, so do you think that Viagra should be covered under state health care?
Most of the time, not. Maybe in an extreme situation, but I think by default, I'd be iffy about that.
What about birth control?
Birth control, I think that's pretty important, because like a lot can go wrong if you have an unwanted pregnancy. I think, there'd be just way more costs if you didn't have it.
So realistically, people don't have endless money. And if you live in a country with public health care, like it's an extra burden on those people to have to get health care otherwise. It's like literally not something that they budget for. They aren't paid a commensurate amount to deal with insurance and private healthcare. So let's say in a country like the United Kingdom, or England specifically, where they have essentially started cutting off access to this type of healthcare in the same way that you're basically saying, like, it's public funded, we shouldn't publicly fund certain aspects of gender affirming care or like these cosmetic procedures. What you functionally do, even if you aren't explicitly making it illegal, is you are making it basically completely inaccessible without it being like additionally burdensome. So it's this kind of sneaky, underhanded way of effectively making the care illegal. Like if you just make it so that there are no abortion clinics in the next 300 miles, and you have to find a way to travel there in order to get the abortion, you have functionally made abortion illegal or inaccessible without actually making it illegal or inaccessible. So if we live in a society where we have public health care, it is, I guess, an unfortunate requirement to have to cover these things, or else you are fundamentally like creating an additional burden, discriminating against people. And the way that we would put that in the United States is violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Does that kind of make sense?
So are you arguing, because I guess the reason I had different positions on birth control as opposed to Viagra and like cosmetic surgery is because I'm distinguishing between want and need. So like you'd have to then make the case that these surgeries are something you need and not just want, which you seem to be implying.
So why do you think, as someone who has not experienced gender dysphoria and has not studied the condition at all, have any say in whether this is something someone else needs or not? Like on a policy, you're saying as a governmental policy position, it should not be accessible to these people because your personal opinion is that this is cosmetic and not medically necessary.
Well, I guess the reason I said that is because your side is like saying you don't need, like you're the one saying you don't need gender dysphoria to be trans. So like now you're falling back on it to try to get these surgeries publicly funded. Do you see how that's a bit questionable?
That's two different
like,
questions. Whether you're allowed to identify as trans without the clinical dysphoria is a separate question to whether you get access to medical care and surgery. Now, unfortunately, we do live in a medical model where we are treating illness rather than maximizing wellness. So yes, we do unfortunately have to invent a pretend diagnosis in order to convince cisgender gatekeepers that we are adequately suffering in order to deserve the care that we need or want or whatever you would want to say. Like fundamentally, the question is, do I have the right to do what I want with my body? And if we live in a situation where we have public health care, you know, pipe dream as much as it feels like to an American, you do have to provide that care because of the obvious medical outcomes that are negative. Like we can demonstrate fully, you know, whether you think it's a legitimate medical problem or not. As Arden pointed out, there are studies upon studies of positive life outcomes. You can say mental health, you can specify mental health if you'd like, but positive life outcomes, like students going from failing to succeeding in school, students going from having no friends to suddenly flourishing and joining the local sports team if they're legally allowed to do that. You know, like the burden that we place on transgender people by denying them medical care is pretty severe. And so, yeah, like, I guess I'll throw it back to, I guess I've been talking a lot. Arden, do you have anything to add?
No, I think this has been a good like line of questioning because Pamela has been a good, engaging conversationalist on this topic, even though we don't agree, which I do appreciate, Pamela. You call into the show quite a bit and, well, not quite a bit, but you've called a couple times. And so we're able to actually kind of like explore this further. And I do think you pose interesting questions for sure. That said, we actually do have like 5 other callers on the line that I do want to get to. And we've been on this call for half an hour. So I want to give you, Pamela, a chance to give like a final word or whatever you want to say. And then we'll probably have to wrap this up and put a little bow on it for next time, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, sure, that's good. I would have had more friends if I'd gotten breast implants too, but that's not covered by the government. Anyway, I guess you seem to be, I guess from my perspective, flip-flopping on like whether it's something you need or something you want. And it's like, because in order to say it's something you need, you'd have to say it's a medical problem, and you don't want to say that. But if it's something you want, then you have to pay for it yourselves, and you don't want to say that. You seem to just be flip-flopping to get your way. That's how I see it. But we'll talk more next time.
Sure. Thanks so much, Pamela. We will talk to you next time. And I want to point out that there was actually no flip-flopping done. I think Lux made a pretty good case for why there is a need, or why the concept of a need is dubious in the first place, and how we make those cases for those things in the medical systems that we have, which is what they were doing. But it's okay if you didn't see that. Sorry, got to get a little snarky job in after the fact. It's,
we'll catch you next time, Pam.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to get to all these callers if possible. We're already at 3, so maybe this might be a slightly longer show, if that's okay with you.
I'm excited.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Why don't we cap the calls? Because I would like to get to all of these. But if we get any more, we won't be able to get to them. So let's take just right in line. Let's go Reuben in Kentucky. Pronouns are they, them. Reuben, or he, they, sorry. Reuben, you're live on the line. What's going on?
Hello, it's good to talk to you again, Arden.
Yeah, what's going on? What would you like to talk about today?
I had, this came to me last night. I'd been kind of wanting to call in again, just didn't have another good topic yet. Last night I had a discussion with somebody that prompted a thought, how do I go about answering that? And he basically said he supported whatever people wanted to do and be basically just not the LGBT community as itself. And I wasn't sure where to go with that, as I don't agree, but I also somewhat understand that there's, in just about any community, there's an amount of hypocrisy within some people that one would dislike.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, that's just humanity, right? But
Right.
I think it depends on kind of where your friend's coming from, because, like, on one hand, if someone says to me, hey, look, I'm not going to be an LGBT ally, I'm not going to be an advocate, but I recognize that you have a rights as a citizen of this country to live your life unimpeded, and so, I will vote in accordance with that because that's my moral compass, but I don't support, like, your lifestyle or whatever as a Christian. For me personally, I'm actually okay with that. I think that is a more realistic compromise that we're going to get from Christians and like the more fundamentalist religious people that make up a lot of America. But if they're saying, I support LGBT people, meaning, like, if they have a gay son, they'll tell their gay son they love them, but I don't support the community, and meaning I'm going to vote against your right to be married or to adopt or to freely access education or housing or anything like that, then I would say, well, you objectively don't support me. You are actually objectively harming me and my community and infringing on our ability to go about the world. I don't. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Lex?
I basically it's like the question is, there's a person in your life who is against, like, the concept of the LGBT community being, like, a cohesive unit. Is that? I was kind of confused about the question.
Closer to it. Like, he wasn't in the point of not, like, voting against people. So I'm having a feeling that it's more like he doesn't want to interact as a community, and more like person to person is more all right.
Is this a gay person who doesn't like that trans people are in the club? Like, is that what we're talking about?
I get that question off, but it might be, honestly. I'm not sure. I kind of asked,
because I do see this,
so I could go ask better questions, basically.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to start, is kind of asking, like, what their motivation for saying something like that is. Because, like,
what I got was that there were groups that he's been in that had, oh, you can't be this way if you're that, or that way if you're this type of thing, and he didn't like that.
Okay. So that's kind of a distinct issue, I guess, than the direction I was originally interpreting it as. I will say I have experienced within, like local communities and, like, support groups and things earlier on in my transition. There definitely is going to naturally, I think, again, this is just a human problem, be, like, cliques that form, and, like, that kind of thing is going to go on. But I also think people are well within their rights to say, like, if the thing that, like, we don't fuck with this, if they're talking about, like, you are voting for or talking, or your rhetoric is one that is, like, harmful towards the LGBT community, I think they're well within their rights to be like, nah, we don't fuck with you. Like, you are clearly harmful to our community. But yeah, I mean, there's just, I've heard similar things like this in the past, and it's almost like people expect, because queer people have had to go through so much advocating for ourselves to find acceptance and things, that we're just going to be, like, inhumanly, like, loving and accepting of every individual. And that's just not, I think it's really important that people notice that we are human beings, and that, like, we are not, like, uniquely irrational or angry or violent. Like, there are going to be those instances of those things happening because we're human beings, and we're going to fall within all those, human lines that can be drawn. But, like, I don't really understand. I've definitely have heard this before, where people will, like, especially online, people will be like, the trans community online is so toxic. And it's like, sure, there are trans people online who are very toxic, no doubt about it. but like there are toxic portions of literally every community online. Like, in what way are the queer people or trans people uniquely toxic online? Like, can you actually demonstrate that in any way, or even in person? And usually it's more just like, well, this one trans person told me they didn't like the way I expressed this thing, and so now I think the whole trans community is mean and toxic. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do for you there. Yeah, I definitely feel like we're maybe missing some key points of information that would help us know how to like address this person. But I feel like you kind of are already asking a lot of the right questions. And if you take this back to them, hopefully you could have like a more productive conversation on that.
Alrighty.
Yeah, do you think that was helpful, or did we miss the mark, and maybe you need us to try like reframing
Yes,
it? Like,
that helped.
Okay.
I'm sure there's other stuff, but I don't have it written down to remember right now.
Sure. Well, if you think about it, and if you talk to him again and you want to bring it back to us, definitely do that. Our lines are always open. So
Yeah.
give us a call back next time you want to maybe like update how that experience went. And maybe if some of our advice was like really bad and you're like, don't do this, like let us know. We'd definitely like to hear that. I like to improve on the things that I'm doing and advocating for. So
And we'll give
thanks
better
for calling
advice
in,
next
Ruben.
time.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Ruben. I hope you have a better conversation with your friend next time.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to keep cruising right along. Next, we've got Gabriel in Canada. Pronouns are he, him. Gabriel, you're on the line. What's going on?
Hello, how's it going?
Hey.
So
Hello.
good.
Good. Well, yeah, as you can see from my question, I'll just read out my question again.
Sure.
So why should we, or me, I should say, why should I use your preferred pronouns, or like the preferred pronouns of people who prefer different pronouns than I suppose what they were born with sexually?
Sure. So this kind of is relating to the question of Pamela of like want versus need. And in my view, the evidence on trans people and affirming trans identities would suggest that not using trans people's correct pronouns is harmful to their well-being. It has them excluded from their communities and their jobs and education and housing, whereas affirming trans people's identity is indicated with positive life outcomes, mental health outcomes equivalent with that of their cis peers, and access to all of those things we just talked about. So I would say that the reason you should use people's pronouns is because it harms them to not, and it benefits them greatly to do so.
Yeah,
And
like basic
what if
human
I don't-
respect.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to Arden's point there. Like, I'm going to call you Gabriel because that's the name that you gave us. Maybe if I got to know you and became friendly with you, I could call you Gabe, and maybe you'd be cool with that. If I decided one day that you actually look a lot more like a Jessica, and I decided that I'm going to call you Jessica and Jessie, and you're a cute little girl and you she her pronouns, like, I might mean it in all good fun, maybe on some level. But at the end of the day, like, that that's not your name. And if I persist with this kind of treatment, like if I were to tease you in that way at the workplace, at a certain point, you cross the line into simply harassment if the person doesn't appreciate it. And, conferring someone's name onto them is a really important affirmation of their identity. For a lot of us, our names were a gift from our parents, or we went through a journey of self-acceptance and we chose our name. Some people even just decide to shed their childhood nickname and go by their full name when they're older. And like, we respect that evolution when it's literally anybody else, My mom had one of those long names that she got shortened in one way when she was younger, and then she decided she hated that. And we kind of just confer that amount of basic human respect to other individuals because we live in a society where we generally don't want there to be unwanted friction and conflict among individuals when it's really easy to avoid. And like Arden was saying, like, there is demonstrable harm in this case. So, if you're saying I don't want to honor people's pronouns, you're saying that you understand that it's harmful and you're choosing to be harmful.
Well, I'd say that there are a lot of concessions that I wouldn't want to make. Like, I think that people are definitely capable of making claims about themselves that aren't true. And I think that language is a conduit. It's our verbal conduit for symbolically denoting like a reality, an underlying reality. And so it's typically been understood historically that he, for example, was a pronoun that related to males. And
That's
so
just an
at least,
assertion that you're making. Do you have any evidence to back that up?
I mean, and what do you qualify as evidence? Virtually any book that I've ever read.
Like
would kind of
historical evidence?
bolster that
Like,
claim.
I could give you historical evidence
Sure,
of
literature is
transgender people
definitely
who were
historical
honored with
evidence.
their correct pronouns in historical contexts. So I can
Sure, I would say
show
that-
and prove demonstrably that this is a social designation. So you're making a claim, and this is a skeptic show. So you have to prove your claim and not just appeal to common sense, which is what you're doing.
Sure. So I could say that literary evidence definitely counts as historical evidence in certain instances. For example, authors writing in their specific time period, the kind of language that they use denotes the time period in which they've grown up in and, become acquainted with and things like that. And so any book, I can give you a specific example, Twelfth Night, when Shakespeare is referring to who's there's the main character. I can't remember. Malvolio.
What do you think about the fact that he used to be the universal pronoun applying to all human beings?
Sorry?
To each his own. Like, to each his own, or the Star Trek. What do they say at Star Trek at the beginning of the show? Like, for all mankind. What do you think about the fact that historically he, him, and mankind are terms that have been used in a gender-neutral, applicable to all human beings kind of way?
Well, I think that, I don't know if I have any opinion on it in particular. I know that there are some languages where the word woman is actually derivative of the word man. And so I think in that sense, it might be logically consistent, though I don't have any qualms about anything, I don't really have an opinion on it necessarily. I just don't think that I want to push back a
little bit on this use of like literature as a form of history. You're saying that when people use he to refer to a man in the past, that's evidence that it's about sex and biology?
Yeah.
Or is that just that, as Lux pointed out, this is like a social denotation? I don't think anyone's checking out their genitals or taking chromosome tests in Shakespeare's time. I think they probably just use social denotation.
I would say that even that suggestion is kind of anachronistic. I don't think that typically that level of evidence was required until very, very recent history, where people can do things that made their sexual representation
and you know what else?
More ambiguous.
In the past, we didn't require a lot of evidence to demonstrate the shape of the earth, but as we gain new information and new understanding, our standards of evidence get higher so that we can comport with reality.
What is the evidence? I'm asking what precisely is the evidence, and if I don't accept your claim as true, should I be forced?
What is the evidence for what?
So that the claim that if I could say right now that I'm a woman, and I would expect other people to accept that claim about my identity, what is the evidence that is a true claim? And if I could follow that
Gabriel,
up,
what you're getting at is this thing. We've talked about this on the show so many times. Can people lie? Yes. Human beings are capable of lying. If I sit next to someone on the bus and I say, "Hey, what's your name?" and they say, "Oh, I'm Sally, I'm a teacher," I go, "Well, how do you prove to me that you're a teacher? Should I be allowed to refer to you as a teacher because you haven't demonstrated to me that you're a teacher?" No, I accept and I know that they could be lying, but as a reasonable, not insane person, I just go, "Okay, this is Sally, she's a teacher." And I don't think any bit deeper about it because it's not necessary or appropriate. And when the evidence is showing that, so first of all, the only reasonable way that people can express their gender to you, convey their gender to you, is by telling you. There's no genetic test that's going to tell you, this person has the male gene. And so when somebody's telling you they're a man, sure, they could be lying, hypothetically, but what costs it to you to say, this person is a man, they've told me they're a man, they could be lying, but what reason do I have to disbelieve them?
Sure. Sometimes there are actual reasons. So if I were to, and this has happened, sure, I'll give you them. And just a bit of context. It's I live in Canada, and so the social repercussions for not, acquiescing to this ideology are a lot. I think are different than in the U.S. But so I've had encounters where people who have requested that I call them specific pronouns, and I didn't. Like, I would usually refer to them as their name because I didn't want to start any trouble or whatever. But like, I don't think that there's evidence. Like, I know that biological women typically, generally, express certain secondary sexual characteristics. Like, generally. And it's like the vast majority of the time. There are always outliers, but they don't disprove the rule. So
your measure of whether or not someone is being honest about their gender is how prominent their sexual secondary sex characteristics are. Like, do you see how ridiculous that is? If you're being actually consistent, if you're being actually consistent about this, of people could be lying about their gender, so I'm not going to gender them correctly, you would be skeptical about literally everyone, because the fact is you can't always tell. Trans people pass all the time, not every situation, but all the time. And so your basis for whether or not you're critical of someone's gender is literally, as you just pointed out, whether or not they have tits. Like, do you realize how stupid that is?
That's not true. I think that's an effective
That's literally what you just said, though.
And then what I'll do is I will clarify what I'm actually saying. There are instances where people can make a claim about themselves, and the claim is so mundane that I might not care to inquire about it further. But for example, if I was thankfully I'm already married and I don't have to do this vetting process, but if I were to ask out someone whom I thought was a woman, nowadays I would ask, are you an actual biological woman, before going out, or before even ask,
God, thank goodness you do that.
So
that 99% of people can realize you are unwell and not go out on a date with you.
I have a question for you, Gabriel. Do you reject historical evidence?
Do I reject?
Like, if I could give you multiple examples of transgender individuals who existed in a time before we had access to medical care, as you pointed out, that there is some question nowadays about biological changes, and you think it would have been more obvious back then. If I showed you evidence of, for example, a transgender man who was born female and did not have access to testosterone and convincingly went through his entire life without being gendered female and was posthumously discovered to be female, and he used he, him pronouns his entire life, and everyone who knew him as a man, do you think that that is sufficient evidence to indicate that in actuality, every instance of referring to someone's pronouns, or perhaps not every, but let's say in some instances, pronouns can be referring to a social reality and not just the underlying biological reality, which you seem to think is the most important factor?
So can I repeat the question, or just so I can know that I'm understanding?
Steel man it. Go for it, brother. Do it.
Okay, because I'm sure I've forgotten some things. So you're saying somebody who's functionally lived their life in the past, or in a historical example, as a man, but was discovered posthumously to have been a biological female.
Yep.
And the question was what exactly? That was the.
So my question is, do you recognize that there are instances, and that those instances are significant enough to sway perhaps this absolute, where you believe that historically, the argument that you presented to me at the beginning of this show was that, pronouns traditionally refer to biological reality. You're invoking this traditionalist value of, typically we do it this way, so we shouldn't do it different in the future. But I'm telling you that there are instances where there are transgender individuals who have been referred to by their preferred pronouns, as we would call it in today's age. And some of them, oh man, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Arden. He used to threaten people with a gun who would misgender him. So that was a non-passing trans man, I guess. But there are individuals who passed completely as their preferred gender, and they were treated with the corresponding pronouns and social roles, understood to be husbands instead of wives, all that. Do you recognize that as legitimate and a sufficient form of evidence in this discussion?
It depends what you mean by legitimate. If you're saying, is that a historical example? Perhaps.
Yeah, because you're invoking history. You're invoking the traditionalist way we do this. And so I'm telling you that you're wrong. And that historically is not only biological.
Transgender? So are you saying, is your claim that they identified as transgender, or that they looked as though they were the opposite sex their whole life and everyone treated,
I'm
because those are
saying
two very
they
different
lived
things.
their life as
Those are
a
two
trans, like
very
you would
different
call
things.
it transgender now. You would say transgender now. Those terminologies didn't exist in the past. We're just talking about someone who was, let's stick with this one example, someone who was born female, a little girl, and then they decided, like, actually, I'm going to live my entire life as a boy and then grow up and be a man and have a string of relationships with women, and be a playboy and shoot guns in the Wild West just like a cowboy would. Like, we're understanding this person to have lived their entire life as male and to have not wanted people to discover themselves to be female. Like, nobody knew until after they were dead because they didn't tell anybody.
Okay, sure. Now, if I can make the concession for the sake of the argument that that might be a historical example, there are other things that I'd like to know. For example, is this, how widely socially acceptable was this? Like, I know that there are some things that I actually consider are problematic by way of how LGBT people have been treated in the past. And by my understanding of history is that these types of things were not widely acceptable, for one. Secondly, even if there is a historical example, I'm not entirely convinced that it's ethical. So, for example, if somebody were to say, like in Canada, where there are social repercussions for, and I've worked in school systems, if I didn't want to address a student by their preferred pronouns, I could get fired for it, even though I have religious beliefs. And so it's like, Arden, you were talking about bodily, like autonomy. You were talking about, you were talking about autonomy. It's like, at what point does somebody else's beliefs about themselves mandate or what would you call it? Surpass my beliefs about my religion and how I should talk.
Is the line.
Yeah, literally, because you misgendering them literally negatively impacts, this is evidence-based, their quality of life, right? So your religious belief is impacting them. You gendering them, you get to go home at the end of the day and say, man, I gendered that person, they, them all day, but I think that's a fucking girl. You can do that. That's not infringing on your rights.
The same about your
but
beliefs.
You misgendering them all day does impact their quality of life and their rights.
I could say the same about your beliefs. If I have a daughter in the future, or my wife.
What beliefs? What beliefs?
It might. Okay, like if I'm at risk of losing my job because I don't want to address somebody a certain way.
Yeah.
Or
you don't want to harass them in the workplace.
Or if my daughter has to use a bathroom with biological men, or if my daughter would like to compete in sports, but they're a biological man.
So what you're saying is.
Yes, Gallup.
Yeah. So you're saying that my belief that your irrational fear about a trans woman assaulting your daughter shouldn't impact whether or not trans women can use the restroom. That's impeding your rights. That's what you're saying? Just to be clear.
I'm saying that there might be an interplay between professed beliefs impeding on other people's ways of life.
Sure. Yeah,
sure.
Your way of life.
It can affect
if
both
your way
sides.
of life is you shouldn't be allowed to use the public restroom because I have an irrational fear that you're going to assault my daughter, which is completely unfounded, then yes, I'm willing to infringe on your irrational fear that does nothing to you, by the way, to infringe upon, in place of your fear being legislated, which actually impacts my quality of life and my ability to go out and live as an American citizen.
Sure, then I'd say at least that's consistent. And I would say the same, like I would be willing to infringe on, I guess, LGBT rights. I don't consider them rights, but, requests that people address them certain ways. I don't think it's true. And I think until it's proved to be true, then we should stick to the historical standard. I also think that because there are a few...
What is proof to you? What proof to be true? Prove what to be true?
So, for example, if I were to claim right now that I was a monkey, and I say that I felt my whole life like I was one, how on earth do I begin to prove that? How could I prove that I feel like I am something which I'm not biologically disposed to share any of the same experiences? Where are some biological indicators that the claim that you're making is correct?
As a different species, something which has never been demonstrated, something on which there is literally no literature, and comparing that to trans people telling you, I am a woman, which is a phenomenon that has been documented through human history, that we actually have evidence that affirming those identities is better for their quality of life, and that denying their identities negatively impacts their quality of life. So those are the two things you're comparing, just to set the scene for the rest of
Up until very recently, by the way, the claim that you're making was classified as a mental disorder. Oh, just so you know.
So is
And I
being
would say
gay, my
similar-
dude.
Why do you keep
Yeah,
appealing
well,
to
and-
history? There's lots of things people believed in the past that we showed were wrong because evidence.
And I don't think
And?
that your community has presented sufficient evidence as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so actually what's going on here is that you stand in opposition to virtually every major medical organization, at least within the United States. So they have lots of years of experience as medical professionals and empirical evidence supporting their claims. What do you have? What if you're challenging the experts on this as a non-expert who has not conducted research in the field? Please tell me what evidence you have to present that undermines the agreed upon position by all of these medical organizations.
Sure, there are some physicians, or there are some psychiatrists like Dr. Miriam Grossman, who I defer to on this matter.
I don't give a fuck what one random individual said. We're talking about a body of evidence. Okay, look, we agree, right, that gravity is something that is noticed and demonstrated and agreed upon by most scientists, right? Do we agree on that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So if one person, one medical professional, let's say 100 medical professionals come out and say, actually, I don't think gravity is real, and they have no papers, no empirical data to support their position that the theory of gravity is not true, should we take their word for it just because they say so? Or just because they're scientists who disagree with the consensus?
I'm not advocating to take their word. First, I would say you're making an argument from authority right now.
Nope,
like
that's untrue. That's not what an argument from authority is. That's not what
it's called. Peer review, man.
Actually, I'm going to mute you, Gabriel, because I get this all the time, and I'm ready to break it fucking down, man. An argument from authority is when I say, this is true because this person said it's true. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that these organizations and the professionals within them have collected evidence over time, and it is my non-researcher based opinion that the evidence that they've collected, that they've agreed upon, that I've looked into some of, is compelling enough for me to accept their claim. I'm not saying it's true because they said so. I am saying I am not a professional who has the time to go into all the research on diabetes, but I accept that the medical professionals who have done the research that is accepted by major medical organizations is sufficient for me to accept that their evidence must be compelling. That is not the argument from authority. Those are different things. You're unmuted now.
Sure. So let me ask, what is some of their evidence that you feel compelled to accept? Evidence
do you want me to pull out every fucking study right now, bro?
No, not all of it. Just give me something. Just give me some, if you have it.
I've already talked about this multiple times, Gabriel.
No, you didn't.
You are weaponizing your incompetence right now. You can Google this, my dude. It is readily available. All the information is there. You are fully capable of typing into Google studies about gender dysphoria or like studies about gender affirmation. The statistics are there. This is a waste of time. It's called jacking off. You're just asking questions about shit that you could go Google yourself. You understand that?
Okay, look.
Gabriel, we're going to let you go. Gabriel, we're going to let you go because, as Lux just pointed out, this is no longer productive. I don't think you're actually honestly really interested in coming to an understanding on this point. You just want to undermine. Gabriel, shut up. You just want to undermine the fact that Gabriel, you're muted. Oh, and also you're banned because we don't do that fucking word on this show. So get fucked, you piece of shit. Second of all, we don't have every study on hand because I'm not a fucking researcher. This is not my job to research trans studies. But again, every major medical organization, like the American Psychiatric Association, the American, I don't have the fucking list on hand. They've all compiled all of the evidences that support gender affirming care. Because I don't have that on hand, you think we don't have anything? Yeah, you can use Google and get fucked and never come back to the show, you actual piece of garbage. Fucking,
fun.
I hate...
I'm having so much fun.
God, the fucking... Also, the Jordan Peterson fucking signaling. I'm gonna get arrested. You can go suck
what a
Mr.
victim.
Peterson's dick somewhere else. All right. We are Cruising. All right, we got 3 more callers left. I would like to get to all of them. Please stay on the line. I know we're taking time to get through all these, but next we're going to do Jamie. Pronouns are she, they in St. Louis. Jamie, you are on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi. Oh my God, that last caller was a doozy. Jeez.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, so thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I live here in St. Louis, Missouri, and I can't say it exactly the company I work for obvious reasons, but I've been trying to push for more like trans awareness about the ongoing genocide against trans people. I actually gave a national call to folks across the firm to try and raise awareness about moral panics and things like that and where they can lead. And I find myself running in circles trying to educate people at the firm about, you know, the basic things that we all go through as trans people, instead of like actually getting the results I want, which is like, hey, can you like, I don't know, give us the healthcare we need? So I keep talking to HR, and like a bunch of trans people at our firm have tried to rally together to figure out what HR needs from us to get specific surgeries covered, and they keep giving us the runaround. And at this point, I'm just like, how do I get them to cover specifically facial feminization surgery on our national plan? Because like, there aren't a ton of binary-ish trans people at the firm. There's probably like 7 nationwide. I'm one of them. And like, I don't know, like I feel like the only option that I can see is having them do max out of pocket type stuff, like max 50 grand for each transition a person goes through. But like, it just feels like people just at these firms don't want to listen to us. Like they'll go to Pride events, they'll say they support us, but then when you go into the actual like discussions with them, they give 0 fucks about you. I don't know.
Yeah, I talked a lot last call. Lex, you want to run with this one for a bit?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really tough to know even where to go with your like insurance related issues. Like, it comes down to like, is it an issue where the company is actually standing in the way of having these things covered, or is it something about the insurance company itself that is preventing this from being covered? Like, should it be covered under certain situations and not under others? Like, FFS is a tough one though, for sure. Yeah. Like, I know that it's considered to be largely cosmetic.
Yeah, which
go ahead, Jamie. What were you gonna say?
Unusual to me. Yeah, sorry, there must be a lag here, but it's unusual to me because the DSM, the American Psychological Association, I can't remember if it's them or the AMA that handles the DSM, but basically the American Academy of Pediatrics, they all recommend FFS as part of the standards of care for trans feminine related surgery, right? Or trans feminine related care. And like, you know, I've learned a lot about how corporations work with their insurance providers this past year. Like, for instance, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I learned that our particular company offers a nationwide plan and then they offer statewide plans. Statewide plans are more HMO based, whereas nationwide plan is PPO based. So the PPO is going to have more flexibility than your state, because your state could be like more restrictive or less restrictive with regards to what they cover. But like, you know, I live in Missouri, so obviously not going to go with the HMO, but I don't know. I guess when our company, I learned they do negotiations with the national provider, and then every year they'll try to slot in like a particular ask from a majority of the population. And if trans people don't make up a majority of the population, they're not going to push for that to be included. And then the insurers they push back against wanting to cover like FFS related procedures because there aren't that many binary trans women at these firms. So they don't see like how they're going to make money off of it, because with PPO, like everyone pays in and then the insurance company makes money off of that. So there's like this profit incentive that gets in the way of trans feminine care being covered. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know if like you had any like advice on how to like tackle this, at least internally. I feel like I've exhausted all of my options, to be honest. Like I actually spoke to our head of benefits because they're at the same office I'm at, and like nothing seems to be done. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, I want to first, like, appeal to, like, I'm definitely sorry you're having to do this, because I remember when I was, when I got FS, I had been living in Rhode Island, and I had the state healthcare there, and they alleged to, they claimed they would cover it, but they didn't. I wrestled with them for months and months and months and months. I think like a total of like a year and a half before I started actually just being like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go the private route. And like I got, I was doing my adult work, and I had like a GoFundMe and stuff like that. So I was able to get it covered and all that. But yeah, it's insurance companies really, I mean, getting them to cover breast augmentation is hard because that's cosmetic in their eyes, but even that's a lot easier to get them to cover than FFS.
Yeah.
I feel like
I was able to, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go for it.
No, I was just going to say I was actually able to get bottom and top surgery covered, but yeah, FFS is the one. They're just like, absolutely not. And I'm like, that's to me, honestly, the most important one.
Yeah, I mean, like, people aren't looking at my genitals when I'm walking down the street, but they are looking at my face. Like, that is, yeah, it's so obvious why that's huge for dysphoria, but people don't really seem to understand that. I don't know if I have particular advice to offer you. It sounds like you have done a more thorough job and thought of more thorough solutions than I thought of when I was wrestling with my insurance company for this, my personal one. So I don't know if I have much advice as much to just offer you, like, I'm really deeply sorry that you are going through this. And also to commend you, because something I think about with activism all the time is that I will sometimes get bogged down and exhausted with like, hate that I have to do this. I shouldn't have to do this for myself. It's like debasing and it's just not right. But you doing this is carrying the torch so that the next generation after you has to fight just like a tiny bit less, hopefully, on these things. And I don't know if there's any solace I can offer you. It's that most companies probably aren't even thinking about this right now. And because of you, maybe they will advocate for this sooner than a lot of other companies will. And maybe like other trans people at your firm, especially in the future, could benefit from it. But I know that's kind of like not really helpful when you're like, I'm dealing with this now, though, in the present day.
I guess I would say, like, I don't know what kind of position you have. If you are in a position where you have clients or you're in any way public facing, that might be like a convincing argument to the people who negotiate your insurance. Like, I will do better with my clients if I don't have this incongruent appearance thing going on. Like, and like, as previously stated, your genitals are not on display typically in most jobs. So like your presentation as a representative of your company can be relevant. Like FFS can be the difference between you getting a job or not in terms of like, if there's anti-trans discrimination, you want to pass more. So as far as like how to convince people, that's one of the recommendations that I would make. Like just trying to appeal to that fact that, this can be a factor in your job, in, whether you have clients, whether you're public facing, even just in relations with other departments or other firms. I'm not sure how relevant that is to you, but yeah, I mean, I feel for you. I'm glad that you got those other procedures done and covered. Like, that's amazing. It sucks that this one hurdle, which is so hugely impactful to so many people, is also the most gatekept. So I hope that you're able to make some progress with that.
No, I appreciate it. And I think that like the only other thing I can think of is maybe doing collective action. Because like, I'm not the only one who deals with this. Like you go on Reddit or any other like forum and you see so many trans people are like, my insurance won't cover this, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, at some point I just wish that there was some way we could all like collectivize, just force insurance companies to cover this shit. Cause like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely empathize
But
with you, and it's I think until we have a more public option, I think this is something that we're probably not going to see not to be pessimistic, but just realistically, I don't think insurance
yeah,
companies currently feel as though they have an incentive at all to cover these sort of procedures for trans people. I think in the long run, they probably, if you actually did an analysis, it probably would actually save them money, because I imagine those people would then become more productive members of like society when they're not dealing with dysphoria all the time and making more money to pay into their insurance program and whatever. But
mhm.
that, as far as right now, it just looks cosmetic to them. So yeah,
And they don't
I'm
want to
sorry.
cover a lot of even like medically approved stuff. Like, to be clear, insurance companies also
yeah.
are just denying a lot of stuff at the moment. So it's not even just unique to
Yeah.
trans people, although there are specific things with our care. But yeah, I mean,
For
in
sure.
general, it's also just getting harder because they're hiring people who basically they tell to just like don't approve things as often as possible, because that's how they make money.
Yeah, my partner
Oh
is
yeah,
a
that
diabetic,
was my
and he gets
stepmom.
denied all of like the best options all the time. They're always like, this is definitely the best for you, but we're not going to cover that one.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? That doesn't even okay.
Practicing
Yeah.
medicine
Yeah,
without a
No,
medical
I
license.
like.
We love it.
Yep. No, I actually, I guess one last thing before I hop off, because I know you got a lot of calls. No, my stepmom, may she burn in hell. She's a piece of shit. She actually works for a major health insurance company, and like, she's not supposed to have her office in earshot of anyone, because she's one of those case managers that basically gets told to tell people no. And I've heard her say straight up say before that, oh, this person doesn't deserve a liver transplant because they were an alcoholic. Like, insurance companies are evil, but I think we all know that.
yeah, I think most
So,
Americans probably have a personal story about why that is the case. But yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't give
yeah,
you better advice, Jamie. But I appreciate you. Like, I think you've done more work than a lot of trans people have at advocating for their own care and the care of others at their workplace. So definitely thanks to you for doing that. We really appreciate it.
awesome. And can I tell Jimmy to fuck off?
Go for it.
All right, fuck you, Jimmy.
All right.
Bye.
Wonderful. Love it. Beautiful.
Nice.
All right. Man, we are cruising. All right. I know we're going like way over time, but it's fine. As long as Lex is good, I want to take these last two callers. We're having fun with it. We got Violet in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia. They, she. Violet, you're on the line. What's up?
Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear
Thanks
me?
for waiting. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah,
What's going
no
on?
problem. Okay, so I've been trying to reconcile a lot of different thoughts, but I think the biggest thought that I have that isn't really discussed in most trans discussions is sex-based discrimination inherent in any form of sex segregated spaces. That for non-binary people, having to have our sex assigned at birth be the basis of access to a facility. For example, in certain facilities, including government facilities, there are only male and female washrooms that are available. There are no gender-neutral washrooms, and there are no washrooms that are available for people's disabilities in some cases that are gender-neutral. This isn't as much the case where I live in Vancouver, but I do know that there are a huge issue worldwide of like necessary facilities for people to function and exist that are sex segregated and only available through sex segregated like restrictions. And so my thought is that inherently a problem as opposed to it being a problem just in practice of how it's being applied? Because if we go from the assumption that well, trans people will just use whichever bathroom they want. Well, that's not always an option. Like for a non-binary person that's femme presenting, you're going to be expected to use the women's washroom. And that means regardless of if you are a woman or not, you are still expected to define yourself by sex segregation in order to use a facility that you need, right? And my argument would be that if we don't have some form of gender neutral option, especially when it comes to change rooms and when it comes to baby change stations. Like, I'd argue any form of sex discrimination on that. And for example, the fact that babies change rooms are almost always put in the women's washroom, I'd argue that that's sexist against not just cis men, but all genders, because regardless of your sex, the fact that you have to basically acknowledge your sex as a basis of using a facility that you need in order to function in society, in this case, the baby's changing table, that inherently is sex-based discrimination, not just trans discrimination, but just like on a broader issue is inherently sexist against everyone, cis or trans, non-binary or binary. So, like, I guess it's just sort of the question of why is it that, like, a lot of the conversation seems to be conceded into the binary notions as the first way of discussing it, instead of following it to its logical conclusion, because it feels like it's coddling almost to people that aren't even comfortable with admitting non-binary people exist, because there are some people that are non-binary phobic but are accepting of binary trans people. Like, it feels like the political dialogue has become so, like, Overton windowed so far that now even discussion of non-binary issues is considered radical extremist, even though, like, being non-binary is a thing just like anything else, but it's treated like it's some extreme version of being trans, which I just don't get why the discussion has sort of devolved so much now into just defending binary people's ability to be safe without discussing the inherent lack of safety non-binary people have in a society where the few people who are fighting for the rights are often just rejecting non-binary needs as a nice to have because it gets in the way of their ability to protect binary trans rights.
Yeah, can I go ahead and jump in since I have the non-binary bathroom experience?
Yes.
So yeah, like, this is a really hard thing to navigate, and like, I'm transmasculine, but I don't want top surgery, and I also am not that masculine in my presentation a lot of the time. So, like, the question, what bathroom do I use? You know, Kansas recently passed a law restricting my bathroom access, so we'll see how that goes going forward. Yeah, so I think that to your question, like, you're kind of lamenting sort of a similar thing that happened to the trans community more broadly when the gays were going for marriage equality. You know, there was a lot of this, like, I'm normal, I want to just have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence. Like, there's all this, like, clinging to the status quo that happens because they think that that's their shoe in. You know, as long as you understand me as normal, then I can gain acceptance. And this is an issue that I've run into a lot with, like, trans medicalists and true scum types, is that they are doing the same thing that those gay people did back then, which is saying, like, I'm normal, look at me, like, I'm a woman with boobies and I socially transitioned completely, and I, you know, like, go full Blair White with it, you know, like, they are trying desperately to shoe themselves in to the status quo as it currently exists, because fundamentally, like, the existence of non-binary people like us, like, part of the problem with us is that it does necessarily beg the question of fundamentally questioning the segregation of males and females and men and women, and like at that core level, trying to address the idea that, like, these segregated spaces can cause problems fundamentally, that separating our spaces and our hobbies probably contributes to a lot of mutual alienation between men and women. Like, no wonder heterosexuals are struggling so much all the time. Like, they don't have anything in common because we've kept each other, like, very discreetly separated. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you that there is a fundamental sexism and transphobia thing that goes into, like, this belief that, you know, we used to believe that there was a fundamental biological difference between white people and black people, but that was silly. We don't believe that anymore. However, there is definitely a fundamental biological difference between males and females, and therefore we must keep them separated. you know, and then you can invoke the general concept of harm, even though it's far more likely for cisgender men to attack boys in the boys' bathroom than it is for them to pretend to be women and go into the women's room. Like, at a certain point, you can't even appeal to facts with these folks, because what they want is to maintain the system that they are familiar with, and they don't want us to upset that. And yeah, so fundamentally, non-binary people can't even be part of the conversation to a lot of these folks, because yeah, they're trying to shoe into that existing kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, sorry.
it's okay. I was just gonna say that I think to your question about like why is there a lack of discussion on this, or why is it always I mean, I think y'all kind of covered it already. It's obvious, right? It's because I think that is the like perceived as the shoe in, and I think there's probably some validity to the concept that like appealing to the notion that trans people can in some degree fit the system is like a shoe in, but I think it's a misleading shoe in, because they, as far as cis people are concerned, even if you're a binary trans person, you don't, they're not going to view you as fitting in that mold that way, right? Yeah, and I mean, I think there's also like the issue where I think a lot of like my sibling is non-binary, and they were talking about how a lot of the places that they go, if there's like a staff bathroom or something, like that's usually where they'll be directed. If they try to advocate for themselves, like, oh, I don't want to use the men's or women's, do you have another option available? They'll be like, oh, it's the staff bathroom. And it's like, that is almost just as othering, because it's like, you get to go to the quiet private bathroom in the back of the building where nobody else gets to go to, because we don't have a space for you where everyone else is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
had a
necessarily know what the
personal experience
solution
like that.
is. Go ahead, Violet. I don't want to interject.
Well, I was going to say I had that exact experience where the only washrooms they had were two individual binary washrooms. So they're not even like a bunch of urinals and toilet seats. No, this was an individual washroom, but they were gendered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is already kind of absurd. And then they also had the washroom that was designated for all genders, and then they had a sign put over it called the staff washroom. And then when I asked if I could use that one, they said no, it's actually for staff. The workers insisted that they have their own dedicated washroom. So basically what they were saying is that the thing that was legally required most likely of them to have a non-binary washroom, because they were insisting on having binary washrooms even though they're both individual, they then basically said, oh, but like actually we need to protect workers' rights, so that's why we're discriminating against you.
Well, the bigger problem is that that's an ADA violation, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
like
for
that's
sure.
because the neutral bathroom is usually the disabled one.
Similar situation, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
don't get me
you're
started
definitely
on
right
ADA
that there
violation.
needs to be you're definitely right that there needs to be more conversations about like I think it's really easy when we're having these conversations. I do a lot of like hypotheticals and appealing to like how we already agree on a lot of like core principles and things like that. But that is like an effort that I engage in on the show. But I think, and maybe this is a flaw in my activism or my approach or something, because I have often viewed that as kind of like a shoe in to then sort of like get people on board with the idea of like, okay, I already actually kind of didn't realize that I kind of agree with trans people's rights to access, you know, care and spaces and free from discrimination and stuff, and then kind of work them towards that further. But definitely, I think there does need to be more vocal conversation about the, you know, the direction that's taking us and the end goal, rather than just talking about like basically advocating for binary trans people's rights. Yeah, it's I don't know if I necessarily know what's right, if it's better to forego advocating for like trans people to just use whatever restroom they want and then to work on like getting a gender neutral bathroom, or if it's better to start there. And I don't know, it feels like this is a conversation on like political efficacy and rhetoric that we're using when we're talking to politicians and things like that. And I don't know if there's like a clean answer to this, but I definitely think you're right to point out that there is definitely a lack of discussion on the necessary end goal that will be needed for to protect all trans people's rights, right? Like advocating for this sort of position is going to be what actually protects binary trans people as well, even if they think that they could fit into the current system or they're deeply mistaken. Yeah. But I don't know if I have more advice or thoughts on where that could go. I think you both have pointed out the flaws.
There,
and how
there
things
was
are being
one thing I
handled
wanted to clarify to someone. I am in Vancouver, BC, not in Washington. I use the ADA because I know that this is mostly an American audience, so that's the one that they would be familiar with. But also, like it's useful to discuss in terms of American organizations rather than trying to teach Americans the Canadian equivalent, because I've learned the hard way. Whenever I try to do that, they just glaze over. So just clarifying that because of some of the comments that were confused.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, Violet, we do have one other caller we have to get to, and we are so far over time, so I think I'm going to let you go. But I hope you call back if you want to continue this conversation further, because I think there's definitely a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day.
You as well.
Later.
All right. Last caller. Let's do this. Let's finish the gauntlet. We've got Luther.
Let's go.
Pronouns are they, them in New England. Luther, you're on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi, Arden, and hi, Luxander. Is this your first time on the show?
Oh, it sure is.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you're crushing it, and I hope you come back again.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Well, so my question has a political component and a personal component. I'll try to keep it brief because I know you're over time. So, political first. I've been following U.S. politics as kind of a morbid hobby since 2015, and I've been seeing this incipient fascism coming for years. I see the liberal establishment still failing to take it seriously enough. I have, over the past year or so, been seeing mainstream pundits finally starting to use appropriate language to describe what's going on, but there still seems to be quite a lot of "it can't happen here" syndrome going on, and the Dems are still clinging to decorum, which they really need to get over. You don't keep abiding by the rules of a boxing match when your opponent pulls a gun. You need to recognize you're not boxing anymore.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Yeah,
great analogy.
So, well, I wish I could take credit. I heard that around. But anyway, so the Republicans, they're evil, but they're not stupid. They see the writing on the wall. They see that they're quickly about to become electorally irrelevant, and they're attempting to slide in under the wire to entrench permanent minority rule while they still can. And it's pretty clear what they want to establish, let's be real, is a Christo-fascist theocracy. And I am, I'll say, cautiously pessimistic. Some people are cautiously optimistic. I'm on the other side. And I really think whether or not something like that happens, by 2030, all pivots on next year's elections. Even if things break our way, all it does is buy time. And I don't see a soft landing from where we are now, for the same reasons that past a certain point, ending up here was inevitable. Here being gridlock Congress, states gerrymandered to shit, captured judiciary, and just rising authoritarianism in general. And that is the underlying structures of our political system shape the behavior of those within it. For example, like first past the post, making it essentially impossible for third parties to gain a foothold, even if people would love to have that. The structure of the system just doesn't allow it. That kind of thing. So the point is, they're going to keep trying until they succeed or someone stops them. And right now, I don't see the remaining sane political establishment doing that. So that's where I'm coming from my perspective politically. So personally, I'm in my mid 30s. I've been kind of queer adjacent for a long time. Just, a lot of my friends, the groups that I run in, it's just absolutely full of queer people. But thus far, it had been under my assumption. It had been my assumption until 6 months ago that I was just a regular cishet dude. But it's my current working hypothesis is that I am in fact trans, probably. So this was, the catalyst for this was someone I'm really close to came out as non-binary a few years ago. And in trying to grok this and having a devil of a time getting my head around it, I realized that it was because I had a circular definition of man and woman that I defined. It's like, okay, well, if you're not one, then you are the other. And if you're not, and that's it. But it was not actually tethered to anything. So in attempting to ground my definition of it, I tried to quantify my own identity as a man. And surprisingly, I completely failed. And so the further I dug, the more questions it raised, and the more I was just like, okay, I think there might actually be something here. So, but even now, dysphoria is still really not an issue for me. And I do want to pursue, I think I do want to pursue transitioning in some form, or at least take the next step. I like what Katy always talks about, is not trying to pin down what she is or what she was, but just breaking it down to specific things. It's like, okay, do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? And just seeing where it leads you. But that's where I am now. But the issue is this wave that I see coming, and like, I might be wrong, and I hope I am. I really do, but I don't think that I am. I don't think that I am. And the way I like to conceptualize it is my background's in economics, so I like to think of it as a classic game theory payout matrix. You guys know about game? Okay, so basically on the x-axis you've got transition versus not, and then on the y-axis you've got everything is fine versus country goes full fash. I mean, of course you can.
It's a pros and cons. You're doing the pros of doing one thing and the cons of doing the other thing, like on both axes. Yeah. Yeah. So are you basically driving toward feeling like you're not sure if you want to pursue transition because of the increased hostility toward trans people? Like, it's a bad time to realize that you're trans, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, institutionally driving towards, because it's, like legally and that kind of thing, because one of my greatest weaknesses is indeterminate but hard deadlines. So you don't know when it is, like, until it's too late. So basically it's like, okay, so if I don't transition and everything turns out fine, well, then I missed out on however many years of living as my authentic self, assuming I am in fact trans. If I don't, and the country completely goes to shit, then it at least buys me time, because I'm flying under the radar. It buys me time to get out and to even help other people get out. Because I have trans friends across the country, and they do not have the luxury of flying under the radar. They've got, specific plans. And I've told them, I'm like, if it comes down to it, call me. I will be on a plane. I will help you get, whatever it takes. Because they actually saved my life a long time ago. And but anyway, yeah. So, and then, so then if I do transition and everything turns out fine, then great, best case scenario. But if I do transition and then the country goes full fash, then it's Armageddon, which, as Eddie Izzard likes to say, is Australian for Armageddon out of here. And so that's the thing. It's like, I don't feel, and because I don't have, serious dysphoria, anything like that, I don't feel like I have to transition. I just want to. But then it's like, is it prudent in the current political landscape? So currently I have cis het white-ish dude privilege at a time when I believe it may be about to become extremely important. It's like if you lived in 1932 Berlin and you could see where things were going, even if you really wanted to, would you be like, I'm a convert to Judaism? Like that, is that wise? So yeah. So that's basically it. Like, so what do you think? What would you suggest?
I mean, I think most trans people are going to be able to relate to you on this, right? Like, I'm a sex worker, right? So getting bottom surgery for me is difficult alone, because my line of work basically requires me to be pre-op, but I want bottom surgery.
I remember you
It's
mentioned
just-
that on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's a big emotional hurdle, and I've often thought, well, I'm already pretty far along my transition. Should I get bottom surgery now so that theoretically, if we go full fash, maybe I can fly enough under the radar to get out of harm's way or something like that? And I really don't know what the solution is. I did talk to a friend about this. It was over a year ago now, I think. It was back when the abortion stuff was happening last year. I was getting a little bit into doomsday prepper mode, and I've always kind of been that way. I blame my dad because we watched a lot of zombie apocalypse shows, but I kind of got into doomsday prep mode where I'm like, I want to be able to have like a contingency plan, because I think it's I think it's sort of realistic to fear that the country could go that way. But that said, I also think I kind of came to the place, and maybe this is totally wrong and not weighing my options well, but I kind of came to the conclusion that if the country goes full fash, I think there's about jack all I can do about it. And
well, at this point,
quite
sure,
frankly,
you're a public figure, so yeah.
Sure, but I mean, like, even like that aside, like, I don't get noticed in public almost ever, unless I'm with Matt. I feel like at this point, there's almost nothing I can do about it if the country goes that way or not, other than, doing what I'm already doing, talking about this stuff very publicly all the time, making sure like I'm showing up to every election and everything like that, really trying to push like Texas in the right direction or whatever. In the meantime, I feel like the only option for me to not live in complete in a way that really destroys my mental well-being is to kind of live ignorant to it and be like, I'm already doing the advocacy that I know I'm capable of doing. Otherwise, I'm going to try to live my life under the assumption that society is not going to crumble and that eventually we're going to arrive at a point of, a reasonable future for trans people, even if it's not exactly my ideal future. And I feel like I could well be wrong about that, right? I'm definitely considering that the country could go full theocratic fascism and trans people could be, against the wall kind of situation. That's not off of my plate of expected possibilities. But I feel like I can't personally, and I don't know how Lex feels about this or you, Luther, but I also I just realized Lex Luthor, that's kind of funny. Yeah.
That is where it's from, actually.
Every time someone mishears my name at a party, that's every single time.
That's what happened in my brain. I feel like I just have to live under the assumption that it's not going to go that way. It's the only way I can actually get anything done. And I have found ways that kind of help with that. I mean, like establishing normalcy in my life. I have a lot of animals that I take care of. That really helps because basically I'm like, I don't have a lot of time to dawdle on the future. Like right now we've got a few snakes that are close to dropping eggs. We just had one drop eggs the other day. So I'm like, just like 4 times a day, I'm like, yep, gotta go check my snakes. And that is like all that is on my mind because I personally can't live in, I get why you're in that place. And I think it's not unreasonable looking at the state of things to think that things could go that way and to operate under that suspicion. But me personally, I have to kind of be ignorant to it willfully. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Lex?
I am. So I'm going to preface this by saying, I don't know if this is the healthy choice. I am so the opposite. Like I would like, as my advice is assume that the absolute worst thing is going to happen and plan accordingly. Because here's my thing. If you were a Jewish person living in, ye old Weimar Republic and entering into the fascism aspect of it, plenty of folks were literally torn from their homes, dinner on the table, because they thought that they were safe in their country. And I will be not caught slipping like that. Like my assumption.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want the first warning to be the jackboots knocking on the door. That's and there. I've been reading and hearing tons of stories from for a long time from people who were begging their families like, we gotta go, but their families didn't want to go, and so they left and they went to the U.S. or South America or wherever, and then they were okay, and their families didn't make it. And yeah.
So my thing, I'm not making a cute suggestion to like, you should go ahead and move to Minnesota because they established a sanctuary state under the assumption that everybody can afford to do that. I'm basically saying like, if you live in the United States in general, but especially if you live in one of these states where things are dangerous, you need to start treating your life like you're a political refugee. Like, I am planning, I have a teenager who lives in Missouri and lives with my parents currently. And my plan in the like immediate term is like when my lease is up at my current place, like I am going to have him and my other sibling come live with me. And then from there, we're going to be like, okay, how do we next get out of this country? Or like at the very minimum to Washington, where all of the queer people I know own guns. Like I am personally, and like I said, I don't know if this is the smart choice because like Arden was saying, like it's psychologically quite difficult. And I have traumatic stuff, like I have PTSD. And so this is kind of like, I know that it reinforces that, I'm sort of rewarding my fear by saying, yes, the fear is correct. But also, like, it's not paranoia if they're actually out to get you. So I would say, like, do what you need to do to survive on the daily, make art or cook yourself beautiful meals or have a bunch of plants or animals that you take care of. But also be saving up your money. Consider starting to sell some of your more expensive stuff that you don't need. Every single thing that you own that you need to take to a new place. And I'm giving general advice, Luthor. I'm not necessarily directing this purely at you. If you're one of these people in this situation where you live in Florida or you live in Texas, every single thing that you own that you plan to move to another place, you're going to have to pay money to move that thing. So you want to try to get it slimmed down into like the small, like literally refugees arrive in this country with a backpack and their clothes that they're wearing currently. And that's it. And that's the sad reality, I think, is that we are in that situation where, I mean, literally they just voted and had it signed in Florida that they can remove children from gender affirming homes if the other parent doesn't agree with that. Like it's full on.
Yeah, I read that.
Full on camps and stuff is going to be coming very soon, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also kind of why I was saying that I don't think these fears are unfounded. No, it's okay. I was saying that's why I think these fears are not like unfounded for sure. Like, I talked to my therapist for a while. Was very much like, oh, like I understand where you're coming from, but I don't want you to go like full doomsday prepper because that's kind of irrational and like that's gonna like hurt your ability to function. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. However, and yeah, I don't think it's irrational to be thinking about contingency plans for how to get out. But yeah, I don't know what
my immediate question
is.
So yeah, well, right now it's like, do I transition or not? Because again, like if I don't, and I do have that luxury, at least for now, then it buys me time, and I don't need to worry about it quite as much. I don't need to be on like quite as much of a hair trigger. I can be, at DEFCON 2 as opposed to DEFCON 1. And I completely get when a trans person has severe dysphoria, it becomes a question of triage, right? It's like, yeah, the jackboots may be here tomorrow, but the debilitating, even life-threatening dysphoria is here today. You deal with what's in front of you. But for me, I don't really feel like I have to. I just want to. But it's like, do I do it now or do I wait until, a few years from now, maybe when I'm moved out of the country or whatever?
I mean, you're just going to have to weigh that and decide personally, like whether it's going to be, whether you're willing to take the risk on your safety. Because there is a certain amount of risk as like I presume like a trans feminine person, like there are inherent risks to beginning to appear to be transgender. But I will also say, on the other hand, like even if you delay your transition, if you're concerned, like, you currently have medical access and you're concerned about losing that, at the very minimum, estrogen is very easy to get a hold of. It's on the gray market. You can DIY. And like, so if you do feel like you need to postpone, it's probably not going to be a huge deal. And if you're not feeling personally like super motivated to get transition related care, then maybe the choice that you're going to make is to provide a halfway house for people getting out of their difficult locations and like being that place of safety. So like, I guess like you're asking the question, and I think that maybe on some level it's because you do want to transition and you just feel like the situation is like, you're saying maybe you could take it or leave it, but I wonder if maybe there is some underlying, like you do want to pursue it, but the situation is so dangerous that you're feeling like, oh, I could take it or leave it if it means like I could be dead later, you know? So I would say
that's
like
pretty much it,
you just gotta weigh that on
like
yourself.
other than some family stuff, but I wouldn't let that stop me. It's more this. Yeah, like if I felt like I lived in a totally safe country and like everything was fine, and it's like then yeah, I would definitely be taking the next step for me at this time. But
I think
it's pretty much entirely the political situation. Yeah.
We are going to have to let you go in just a minute, Luther. I would say I think something you mentioned earlier is probably more of the answer to the question you're really asking, which is trying not to put what transition means for you into a bucket of many things, and instead look at what is maybe reasonable to access now. Like if maybe, I don't know your situation, but maybe if like laser hair removal is something you're interested in, I think that's a great place to start, because there's tons of guys who don't grow facial hair, right? So you could still kind of be like cis passing, but get that one gender affirming treatment and things like that. I think maybe those you can start to kind of like weigh which ones are available to you and which ones are more pressing to you, and maybe which ones can help you be in the situation you want to be in. But with that said, I do want to give you a chance to give your last word, but we are going to have to say goodbye because we're almost an hour over when we normally stop taking calls. So,
well, thank you so much for taking my call, and yeah, no, I think that was pretty much it, and I really appreciate both your insights, and especially what you just said, Arden, with regards to specific things that I might be able to pursue safely now. Yeah. Thank you.
You can try a low dose of a testosterone blocker for a couple months and it won't hurt you at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much, Luther.
Look into it. Thank you.
Best of luck. And if you have more thoughts, please call back on a future episode. We'd love to hear back from you. Thanks so much, Luther.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely will.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry. There's like a 2 seconds after you hit the drop button, does it actually drop? So I always try to preemptively press it to like make it flow, and sometimes it results in us cutting off callers. But anyway, so I want to remind our audience again that if you send us a super chat of $5 or more, we are about to go into the super chat portion of the show where we read them all out loud. Normally we have a type of competition. It's like a Team Arden or Team Lux kind of thing, but we haven't really decided on what a punishment would be. But I mean, I don't know. I thought you were great today. So if you want to come back, maybe we can punt and not worry too much about the punishment, and because then we can have it done later. It doesn't have to be done like right now or anything like that.
Yeah, like we could do it at the top of the next show that I'm on, like just right at the beginning, some horrendous, like I got to eat a habanero or something.
Beautiful. A habanero? That sounds great. It would definitely kick my ass, but I would do it.
Yeah, they taste awful. They're not even worth it for the spice. Anyway, ghost peppers though? Anyway, moving on.
Wait, okay, so for clarification, are we saying there is a competition and next time a person has to eat a raw habanero?
This is a tough competition because I'm new blood coming in against like beloved favorite of the show, Arden. So I mean, it'll be a contentious kind of competition, but let's just see what happens.
You're also about to get the boost of this sort of happens sometimes where we get a new guest in and everybody's like, holy shit, this new guest is really good, and that usually gets because you are well liked in the chat. No, because sometimes we have new people and they suck, but we don't tell them that. You know, every now and then you're like, hey, this was great. I'm so glad we collabed. Let's do something not like this next time, which is fine. That not everyone's going to be good at calling shows, but yeah, you were great. To the point that it kind of annoys me actually. Like you, and then we had Eric last night who was just like, yeah, I'm nervous. It's my first time doing something. And then he's like, so I'm just going to be better than most people's like 30th show.
Right.
Yeah, just 2 days
in a row. It does happen.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that was the same reaction I had when we had Josie on the first time. I was like, oh my God, she's literally steering the show. Like, this is amazing. Like, that's a level of expertise that you don't get very often.
Josie Caraballo?
Caballero?
Yeah, it's one of those two. I can never remember. Yes, yeah, she's great. I love her.
Yeah, she's
wonderful
and just does everything. Wait, I have one more thing.
There you go.
I know you're trying to rush, but I'd like to introduce a controversial opinion that I don't know how the two of you would feel about, and we can
hit it. Controversy.
I'd like to propose that we should not make the phrase "full fash" a thing. as it sounds kitschy and sweet almost. It almost sounds like yeah, and then Tom went full fash, and it just takes all of the power away of that, I feel. How do we?
Yeah, I get that. I just used it because the caller did, but also I have to say, I think you pointed this out in the chat, Jimmy. Lex, earlier in the show, you said something like you're weaponizing your ignorance, and it was excellent. I'm definitely gonna.
I said, yeah. So I spend a lot of time on Reddit. Am I the asshole right now? And so weaponized incompetence about cis men is like a thing on my mind. And he was like, he's literally like, I could fucking go over and just type in studies. I'm like, okay. It's not my job to do that. You need to educate yourself because you think there's no studies. It means you didn't even bother to look, But yes, no, it's a great phrase.
I'm stealing it from you.
I'm
telling everyone you're the originator, even though you just said you're not.
I stole it from heterosexual women. Fundamentally.
Beautiful.
Good. Just kidding. I did that meant nothing, but I want people to.
But full fash. No, I want to respond to the full fash thing though, really quick, because there's a line you have to ride between acknowledging that the fascism is real and also taking the piss and undermining their posture of strength by making them seem ridiculous. So it's just a matter of deciding whether full fash undermines the goal of dealing with the seriousness, or if it contributes to the goal of making fascists look like absolute buffoons, because that's one of the ways that you can take their power.
I get it, and you're right. However, full fash isn't good enough. I think we have to go with fashly. Like the name Ashley, I think we have to start calling them fashly. It's an emasculating term. I think that would be strong enough for what you're describing. Full fash literally just sounds like a TikTok trend. Hashtag full fash.
It feels like fashly feels like the leftist equivalent of like Tim's. And wait, what's the
TIFFs?
TIFFs. Yeah, Tim's and TIFFs. It feels like Also, I'm sorry. Before we start super chats, actually, or I can let Lex do the first super chat. I have to pee so bad. I pounded a whole energy drink throughout the show so that I could cooperate.
Do you know what's so funny? Your blur, your Elgato blurred
it was like you were trying to censor the brand, like not sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored.
It's this fucking sugar free. It's just stevia, whatever. Anyway,
I will owe our audience an additional debt if they start live chatting. Okay, Fashly, every time we have some right wing asshole on. Arden, you were meant to leave during that. You don't.
I know. I thought. Sorry. Okay.
I was starting the convo with.
We're vamping.
Yeah, we're vamping. We're vamping. Yeah, a moment of vamping, and then we'll hit up the super chats. I am very sorry for you. I saw your post where you're like, probably do this, then take a break, and then we'll stream at 5. Some part of that is fucked.
It's fine. I followed up in my Discord and was like, listen, y'all, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Because I looked on the channel and I saw that some of the most recent episodes of Takis were like 2.5, 3 hours, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna buckle in for a full show. But I have had a lot of fun. This has been great so far.
It's usually because the audience goes wild with the super chat portion. Like that's usually the less predictable thing, whether it's one they'll feel extra competitive for or not. But no, this one was really good combos. A couple of GC calls. I was dying. I even messaged Arden, but I think she didn't see it in time. I wanted to know whether or not Pamela believed that if a cis woman had breast cancer and then had a double mastectomy, should she have reconstructive surgery? Yeah, because that's literally gender affirming care, or maybe the negation of gender de-affirming surgery that a double mastectomy would provide to a cis woman. But either way, it's still in the same category. And I would have loved to hear Pamela's whether Pamela thought that or not. Oh Lux,
gosh, I told you. Hold on. I know. What a jerk who gave me this camera for free.
Piece of shit. That is interesting. Yeah, I'll see if I'll Google it for you at some point. Okay, cool. You're back. I was saying to Luxander, the question that didn't get asked of Pamela that I was dying to hear the answer to was whether or not she believes that a cis woman who received a double mastectomy for breast cancer should have her implants, if she decided to do that after, covered.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of touched on like the ethical argument for advocating for that, sort of, but Yeah, I mean, I hope Pamela calls back. I thought almost all of the callers today were really good callers. It's not often that we get like 3 or 4 like compelling, not on our side callers. So that was really good.
I will say of Pamela, I remember most of her calls. She reminds me of Andrew and Mark from the atheist shows, where it will appear that there is progress happening, and then the next time she calls, it's just, oh, gotcha. So you didn't internalize anything from the last time we did this, and you conceded points. And it was even happening in the call. She kept emphasizing the whole like, you know, you think that people should willy-nilly just be able to get it without any conversation. It was literally like right after Lux said like, here are, with no questions asked, Lux literally had just said like, yeah, here are the questions you should ask. Here are the like things that should qualify whether it's care or not. And then Pamela still was like, yeah, so it's just to me sounded, oh, I won't do an impression, but you're advocating for, I love doing my impression of Wes when he calls though. I'll just do it as Wes. What are you advocating for? Yeah, it's just people willy-nilly, no questions asked, right? That's Wes.
Yeah. Anyway. No, I mean, I tried to call her out on that too, but I get it. When you're operating from her framework, I feel like the only option you have is to accuse the person you're talking to of doing things that they're not actually doing.
Which, whatever, that's whatever. What more annoyed me is it was clearly showing she wasn't actually listening to the words you were saying, because you could literally list, here are the questions that should be asked, and the next phrase out of her mouth includes, you said no questions asked, and you're like, you said no question asked, and I just am not going to be a part of your religion. Sorry.
Right,
I can't stop
part
doing
of your
Wes.
religion.
And then one dude said ideology, and Arden made a sound, and that made me laugh. I think you sighed.
I groaned. The same dude who did the Jordan Peterson thing, I had a hard time not groaning more loudly at him. And he turned out to be actual garbage, which is... when you start doing these shows for long enough, I feel like my sensor for the type of person you are gets really finely tuned. And I'm like, I've heard 3 words and I already know like everything about you.
He did a lot of no, you didn't, and no, no-uhs when you were like, I literally talk about those all the. No, you don't. Oh wow, this guy, fucking prescient motherfucker. Anyway, whatever.
Yes, super chat. So we'll alternate between myself and Lux, and then I'll start. $10 from James Call. Of course, I know Arden. She ate a sandwich I recommended. It is nice to meet you, Luxander. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. Oh, is this about the peanut butter and relish one that I did? I think James recommended that. It was one of our punishments. It was a
sweet
peanut
relish?
butter and relish.
Like, okay.
Yeah, well, that's what I did. It was actually not bad. I was like vomiting in my mouth before I took a bite, but then I took a bite and I was like, oh, this is not as scary as I thought it would be.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, James.
53% of the polls in chat said, yes, we should have Lux back. The other 47% said yes, but in lowercase letters.
Like the lack of enthusiasm, I feel so unwelcome.
Well, it was also the first option though, and I think that
that's true.
Some people like, should you yes, and then you're like, fuck, there was the other option. I didn't read all of the options. I wanted to vote for
That's why
Nader.
They told you in your tests when you're in school, they told you to read the whole thing before you started working on it. You know, that's why you got a 0.
I was the worst about that. I literally, I got so many questions wrong in school because I didn't read the whole question.
Did you fail every trick test where it was like, now that you've read to the end, turn your paper over, don't write on this at all.
And sit quietly,
And sit quietly, yeah. And then, did you ever have those?
I don't know if I got any of those. I don't feel like I got any of those.
If I've heard of them. It's like an urban legend.
No, it's not. What are you I think I had 7
I'm saying I've never
them.
seen one.
I think I had.
It just sounds like it's fake.
I'm certain I've had.
Does kind of.
I was gonna say like at first I was like, did you get this every year? Because I felt like it was like starting in about 6th grade. I felt like some teacher did it. Anyway, whatever.
No, I don't think I got that.
They probably just
anyway.
By college I had like a study system down. So
word.
Anyway,
I have ADHD. I can't do that. Super chat. $9.99 from 7 Lions. Thank you so much for the super chat. 2 days ago was my rebirth day. I've been on HRT for 1 year. Best year of my life so far, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Aw.
Finally love my reflection, and my confidence is through the roof. Hashtag Team Arden. That's so wholesome, and I love that for you.
I know, that's really cute. Thank you so much for
I like
the super
rebirth
chat,
day.
Stefan. Yeah, that's really cute. We
Mhm.
got €5 from Andrew Botea. Last week, Arden said I was mean to her because of my hashtag go fuck yourself, Arden. So here's a sharp Team Arden. That's a sharp, not a hash sign, by the way.
Yeah, it's a sharp.
I saw it ahead of time because I was a fucking musical theater music nerd. So I was prepared for that one. The math ones will always get me, but not music.
Yeah, for sure. What is that? €5? Yeah, €5 from Andrew Batella. Hello. Apparently YouTube doesn't let me have the word meaning not nice on a super chat. What the fuck? That's a flat. Team Luxander. And then, wait, I recognize that other symbol, but I don't know what it actually is. Oh, natural. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Team go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Thank you, Andrew. These people always trying to confuse us. Wait till we get I'm sorry, I forget your name. The person who donates every show that always asks math questions because they know that I'm gonna get them wrong, guaranteed. I'm gonna be like, I don't understand. $5 from Mike B. Hashtag Team Arden. Thank you. LOL. The hashtag already made it into my autocorrect. That's funny. Hashtag go fuck yourself. That mother forker. True. Go fuck yourself, mother forker. Mother.
Did y'all watch Dave? Have you watched Dave's episode yet of Dying Out Loud? The first one?
I didn't. I saw one clip that Eve shared, but I didn't see the whole show.
I've ruined something. I've said in private life, like amongst people, that like the number one compliment I want is some version of like, Jimmy is that motherfucker. Like, I don't care about anything else. Just I want to be known as the resourceful guy who gets shit done. But I said that out loud on Dave's show. And now everyone's saying like Jimmy's that motherfucker. And I'm like, it kind of ruins it because I want it. And so I no longer want it. Like it's I've got to find out something new and keep it to my fucking self.
Yeah, you should have kept it a secret.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Yep.
$20 super chat from Mo Scoville. Heart the show, keep being awesome always. Hashtag Team Arden.
Oh,
Very nice.
Thank you so much, Mo. I just did work with Mo last month. He is genuinely an incredible human being. Such a good producer. Like amazing. Love him so much. Thank you for supporting the show.
Hell yeah.
Jimmy's taking his sweet fucking time.
Oh
There we
my
go.
God.
Hey, I had to fill the dead air somehow. Shit talking you is normally how I do
You know what
it.
I'm going to do is I think I'm going to get a little, like just a cheap little dedicated PC that everyone can remote into that only has, you know how Matt can do his own things when you're hosting?
Yeah.
I'm going to make it so everyone can. And then it's
They all
everyone
have
else's
to.
fault.
So yeah, okay. $10 from Larry Fishman. British TERFs and Tories are claiming that the total bodily autonomy pushed by the, quote, global left is a foot in the door towards dystopian post-humanism. Okay, this is actually interesting, and I've talked about this a little bit with Matt. So I hear this a lot about the like transhumanist agenda. I mean, usually it's like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory when it's coming from TERFs. Because usually it's like, George Soros and these billionaires who are conveniently all Jewish are pushing for this outcome or whatever. But like their stupid conspiracy aside, I actually like 100% think transhumanism sounds dope as fuck. Like, you're right to do whatever the fuck you want with your body under any like auspices. Like, yeah, if the future is available where you can have like a tail and wings, fucking I don't care. Go for it. Get your tail and wings, baby. Like, live your best life.
Every scary thing people try to say about transhumanism just makes it sound like based as fuck. Like
Yeah,
every
for
single
real.
time. Like, what, you mean I get to shed my mortal coil? Please, get me out of the skin suit.
So that's a question I have. What's the minimum requirement to be a transhumanist? Like, I have a metal shin bone, basically. Surely that's not a transhumanism.
I mean, it sort of depends on what your definition of like using technology to augment your body. Like, I mean,
So then
depends
I guess
on how
that
you
kind of
define
is.
technology and augment and your body.
Yeah. So
I think
if you take it to the extreme, like taking anxiety medication could be considered transhumanism because medicine is a type of technology. It's not medically necessary. You're changing something about who you are so that you can because apparently you feel that your ideal actual self is less socially anxious or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you take the logic to its natural conclusion, I think that transhumanism is a lot more ubiquitous than we think it is.
And for the
Yeah,
record,
I mean,
I'm
like-
fully pro transhuman. Like everything but my brain, unless they figure out a way to move consciousness from the brain to a chip and it maintains your consciousness, I have no attachment to any other part of my body. The whole thing can go.
There's a whole other conversation about there. That's like the transporter problem. Is that even really you at that point? Which I think I would say it's probably not. But that totally aside, I think there are people who would definitely advocate that having like a metal support in your body is transhumanism. Like Matt's got the Libre diabetic sensor that tells him his blood sugar at all times.
Yeah.
Like that's like kind of like part of like the
or
but I know,
diabetics with pumps. They
Matt
basically
knows
got
more
a
about
machine
like the
pancreas.
actual. Yeah, I forget what his objections were, but Matt was explaining like he's more into like the actual like philosophical position of transhumanism, not the wacky gender critical conspiracy theory aspect of it, which is what I'm more familiar with. So I think there are other things to talk about there that I'm not familiar
Arden,
with, but
you pose though the question of, but is that really you at that point, right? Let's just do it like this. Pose that question to me after assuming I just said how I want to totally jump bodies. Go ahead, ask me.
Oh, is that really you at this point?
God, I fucking hope not. That's my actual honest answer. Like, why is that? Why would that matter?
Well,
Christ.
I mean, no, I think that is a personal thing, right? Like whether or not you care that it is like a being that has all your memories and all your values and all your hopes and dreams and is, identical to you in most like meaningful ways, but is like categorically not the same entity as you.
Yeah.
Like I think
from the moment that you
might not matter
split,
to
there's
some
a divergence.
If I'm capable of
I feel like it would matter to me.
If I'm capable of being cyborg Spider-Man, I don't need to remember anything about my childhood. That's fine.
There. Go for it, baby. Live your best life.
That sounds better.
$5 super chat. Thank you so much from RPG Debunks. I feel like I could talk with Arden about snickety snacks for hours, but I've got to give my vote to the noob. Hashtag team noob and Uckfaze Jimmy. There we go.
What?
I decided it's go fuck yourself. And it's been like swooched around. I'm not entirely sure what happened there.
The G is just gone.
Yeah,
it's gone. Yeah, it became an E.
Too. And I might be pro transhumanism, but there are limits. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I could probably talk with you about snakes for hours to RPG Bunks. And so exciting, we had a snake that got out like a week ago, and we found him last night, and so he is back. Back where he belongs.
That's good news.
I was so worried. He had a really bad shed because he wasn't in the right conditions to have his shed go properly. So that will probably take like a month to fix itself. But he is well and he is not hurt, and so we'll hopefully get him a meal today, and then he'll be all better.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. And you're sure it's him? You didn't just find one of the snakes that was stalking
not
your
a random
rats?
snake.
Yeah. Well, that just happened.
Believe it or not, we only had one brown African house snake in our entire collection. So yes, he is definitely the only one. I mean, he could have been no. It's definitely him. I was gonna say he could have been like a parthenogenic female, but no, that's not what happened.
Didn't you have 2 snakes stalking your rats last week?
Yeah, oh yeah, we had some wild Texas rat snakes come into our garage, and they were like climbing our rat racks, and they were like looking down in, like they were like, I know the food's there, but I can't access it, but it smells so good.
That is so cool.
We
I remember
rounded them up and drove them out to a field.
One time my brother and you went fishing, and then we used the fish to lure in snakes to eat the fish that were in the water. Like I don't think any of them were moccasins. I think they were all the water snake that everybody thinks is a moccasin. Anyway, just those experiences, like what you're describing of just finding these wild snakes, that's like the kind of shit that just keeps me positive for months. I'll just think about that little interaction.
I haven't caught a wild snake since I was like a tiny kid, so it was pretty exciting that they like delivered themselves to our doorstep, and they were beautiful. They were kind of fat. I was almost like, damn, like you're not struggling to find food out there at all, because rat snakes are like about the size of our corn snakes. You know, they're the same. Technically, corn snakes are rat snakes, and so I was expecting them to be like a similar thickness, but no, these were girthy fuckers. I was like, shit, okay, you're doing so well for yourself.
And I did.
Oh, well, I've got some. I'm gonna try not to show you guys adult content. I think this one's me, right? $9.99 from Sean Q. Yeah. Is there an easier way to refer to non-binary individuals other than using a term that also means multiple people? They, them can get confusing when referring to an individual. Love the show. I don't have that problem. They, them is not an issue for me with the multiple person thing. I hear that a lot, but
yeah. You also juggle this with you and you. So like, I think that if you have a grasp of English and you can determine that there are actually 3 different uses of the word you, one of them is singular, one of them is plural, and one of them is universal. You know, sometimes we do need to clarify when you say like, if you're saying, oh, you know, you can't just do that. You might have to clarify, I don't mean you as an individual are not allowed to do that. I mean like you universally. So we already have that kind of, you know, occasionally there's a little bit of confusion about plurality in our pronouns, but like if you're capable of speaking English and determining you and you from each other, then I think you can determine they versus they from context.
I think it's funny how,
you know,
yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, you can say she for multiple women. You can be talking about 3 different women and use she and her multiple times, and it can also be confusing and require clarification. Like, it's fine.
I think it's funny how often a gender critical can't even often get through criticizing the use of singular they, them, even in tweet length, without unironically using a singular they, them.
Truly.
It happens.
Well, because it's
so
okay if it's a person of, if it's indeterminate gender, that's okay. The thing that's newfangled and not okay about it is that you're using it as a personal pronoun. Stupid argument.
Yeah.
I realized we didn't take pictures of the rat snakes, but we have videos, which is probably why I didn't send you one.
I'll take.
I want to see if we can. I sent the good video to you. Oh, I want to pause it there. Oh, you can't see her head, but there you go.
There it is.
Big, thick girl. She's beautiful. I kind of was like, after we drove them, I was like, I kind of missed them already, but like, I don't want to take a wild one in. So, you know, just know that hopefully they're better off where they are. Yeah, thank you, Sean. I appreciate the super chat. I think it just takes practice to get over it. Yeah.
Me time. $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Louise Richardson. Who do we know who is not biological? Most people I know are carbon-based life forms. Hashtag Team Arden, if that applies today. Yes, we are taking votes. Arden, you're doing so. Yeah. I mean, you're the favorite. I think that everybody loves you.
You'd be surprised. Once it gets down to the wire of like the last few super chats, usually we'll get like 15 $5 ones in that totally upset whoever was in the lead. So you never know.
They're trying to throw it off right at the end. Yeah.
These are all during the show super chats also. We're not actually at or during the call-in portion. We haven't gotten to the part that happened during us doing this part.
For sure.
$5 from Alyssa Nguyen. I think I did it right that time. I wasn't born with she, her pronouns. The pronouns I was born with aren't gendered or even English, where no one has gone, hashtag where no one has gone before, hashtag Team Felines. Wait, Lux, do you have cats or a cat?
He's not living with me currently, but yes, I do technically. I have a cat right now.
So,
but I was mostly doing the Star Trek thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, true, yeah.
I don't know who Team Felines goes for then. I think that's probably a neutral.
Is Alyssa referring to themselves or like herself? Like she is Team Feline?
I mean, if I'm just trying to answer the question and not be placating, Alyssa has done this before, and usually felines means Katy.
Katy if Katy's tier, me if Katy's not here.
Right, and so with Alyssa's ignorance of your kitties, I think this was an Arden vote.
She's saying that you're catty. Is she calling you catty?
For sure.
That's misogynistic.
I can definitely.
I'm joking.
No, Arden has a cat.
I was gonna say I'll do it to myself.
I'm just being silly, y'all.
Yeah.
Stop. Just kidding. You can do whatever you want.
I will.
Man, it's hot up here. I think this one's you, Lux.
You're wearing a turtleneck.
Yeah, that's true. I did put on a turtleneck. That's my 135-degree enclosure.
Yeah, she's sitting right next to a lizard enclosure. Every time I have to produce
with like
from
heat
there,
lamps.
Oh yeah. This is also like one of the hottest temperature requiring lizards in like the acceptable pet hobby. It's a ornate Uromastyx, which they live in like straight up deserts. Like 130 degrees is what they usually bask in. So,
did you move your room or is it mirrored?
I did not move my room, but I did set up like curtains and lights in the background, so it might look a little different. I don't know.
From my point of view, your bed should be to your left or to your right, the left side of the frame.
My bed is behind me. What do you mean? It's both directions.
Weird. There's something that's fucking me up about the current. Is your camera usually on the other monitor?
It was for a long time, but it hasn't been for like since I got pretty much the face cams. So.
Oh. All right. Well, I'm just gonna keep being wrong. Did we do this one?
Not yet. I don't think.
Oh, sorry. Is this one me? 5 pounds
so.
from Sean Isherwood. I got a referral to the Gender Identity Clinic. The waiting list for the first appointment could be up to 2 years. I'm so glad I got the ball rolling. I'm ABAB, he/him, maybe NB. Well, congrats on getting at least on the waiting list. I'm sorry that there's even a possibility to wait 2 years for your first appointment. That is so insanely unethical, in my opinion. I don't know how they can call themselves like a healthcare system and do that to anyone, but I'm glad that you are at least in the process that is available to you. So congratulations.
Those rat snakes are huge. What the fuck?
Oh yeah. Oh, they're gigantic. They were significantly larger than all of our corn snakes.
Whoa, goodness sakes. Okay. All right. Did you post that on your channel?
Not yet. I was meant to edit I had a little video of us doing all the things like gathering them up and then like bringing them out to where they're,
Word.
Just haven't edited it.
Edited it.
20 pounds, I think. Super chat. Thank you so much. Jackie Greenland. Jackie Greenland. For Arden, given the survey question, I'm interested in the proposed LineCon and the eclipse is a draw for my wife. How safe is Austin for a vaguely passing, sometimes trans woman? No home team this week, so hashtag Team Arden.
I would say Austin is very safe for queer people as a city. Obviously, navigating your way here might involve going through the rest of Texas, which may not be as safe, but I love Austin, actually. I think Austin is phenomenal, and there have been a lot of times where I've been afraid of openly expressing my queerness just out of like an innate fear of like, I'm in Texas. But then the second I did, I was like, oh wait, Austin's amazing. I don't know why I was ever afraid. Austin is really, really great. I've not had any explicit issues. I mean, I've had the fortune to have like FFS and like breast augmentation, so that can help sometimes not encounter transphobia. But I think it's my experience and my understanding from other people I've spoken to is that Austin is a pretty safe community.
Is this one mine?
This one.
I can't remember.
Yep. I think
Is it? Okay.
I think I read the last
I thought I read the last one. I was so confused by it. $5 dono. Thank you so much from YouTuber Grudge. Hashtag Team Dark Arden. Oh God, is there lore here?
Dark Brandon.
Dark Arden. Yeah.
I
Okay. Just a Dark Brandon
not
reference.
Until today, but if
Cool.
I'm the next Dark Brandon acolyte, I will take it.
They were coming in when the Dark Arden came in when you were fighting with the one dude.
And I called him like a piece of garbage or dumb fuck or something.
The ideology.
I do
guy,
tend to get a little harsh on people, especially when they say slurs, unnecessarily. It's just, you lose the respect in my view at that point. But anyway.
The viewers like that, I think. When you have like a contentious phone call that ends with a hang up, I mean, you literally, one of your shows is called The Hang Up. So yeah, obviously there's some appeal to that.
For
this
sure.
Is like, sometimes I'll like send out a thing like, hey everybody, what's a thing you think is a good idea for a show? And then sometimes people will be like, what if you did a show instead of like highlighting all the negatives, highlighting all the positives, and it takes everything to not reply with, because that would be a terrible show that no one would watch. You wouldn't even watch it. You who suggested it would watch the first episode and then never again.
Yeah. $9.99 from Ramona was going to vote for Luxander. You were absolutely killer today, but Arden absolutely bodying Gabriel made me explode into 1,000 butterflies in a sentence. So hashtag Team Arden. I mean, I think Lux did a better job probably bodying that caller's arguments, but I'm glad that you like me bullying the caller. I'll take it.
You have the power to hang up, so you get the credit.
Yeah. The power.
I definitely think Luxander deserves a couple of soups to come in with weaponizing your, not ignorance, incompetence as the caption.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. $5 again from Alyssa Nguyen. Thank you so much. I'm glad Dr. Ben isn't on. I would have been disappointed if he didn't reply to "Where's the evidence?" with "I'm a doctor, not a database." Hashtag damn it, Jimmy.
True. I mean, and that, yeah, that's kind of like the crux of a lot of those things, right? It's like, if you want to oppose the experts for some reason, that's fine, but you can't pretend that we don't have evidence because I am not a repository. You know, I don't have photographic memory to tell you, like, on this page of this study from this publisher, it says that, like, I'm not capable of that, and nobody is, so...
I do not have a photographic memory.
Josie might be capable of those things.
Oh, I mean, that's fair enough.
True.
She does know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She does a million things at once. It's superhuman. Yes. We got $5 from Richard Conrad regarding the poll. Disney just pulled $1 billion project from Florida. Love you, Arden, but hashtag first time host. Jimmy, go stub your toe. That's kind of funny. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how that goes with businesses actually pulling out. Like, is that going to make a difference, or are they just going to go on the offensive? Like, it kind of seems like Ron DeSantis is prepared to go on the offensive against Disney, which just seems like a dumb idea. Like, do you really think that Ron DeSantis has enough money to fight against Disney? Like, no. Disney could just buy a chunk of Florida and declare it to be a 51st state. Like, they can just do whatever they want.
Ron isn't fighting in the hopes of winning. Ron is fighting in the hopes of it boosting his presidential campaign. So
of course.
Yeah, 100%.
None of that matters. Yeah.
He is falling so hard. Man, they were really setting him up earlier this year as like the next Republican pretty boy, but oh man, it is not working out for him.
I'm so looking forward. Look, everything's terrible. Everything is awful. So you get to let yourself enjoy Trump versus DeSantis debates. You get to let yourself.
For sure.
You have to let yourself some nice things.
Sure.
It's going to be so fun.
I think this one's you.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
$9.99. It's cool. I have ADHD and I'm 3 hours into this thing, so I'm like, I gotta get like a snack in a few.
Sure.
Yeah, $9.99. Thank you so much for Stacy N. Love new guest. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun, so I'm glad people enjoyed.
Absolutely. Definitely gonna get you back soon. $4.99 from Louise Richardson. Jimmy is okay in my book. I feel the exact same.
I'm just glad that we're finally getting cis representation on the show.
True.
Aw.
Exactly what we needed.
Thank goodness.
Never enough.
Cis interjections wasn't enough from the producer. Representation.
Absolutely. Oh, $19.99 super chat from Kelsey K. Thank you so much. It took this long to have Luxander on the show. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Hashtag Team Lux. Thank you. Listen, it's been in the works for a long time. It's just mainly that I finally was like, hey, Jimmy, we've talked about this for like almost a year. Let's actually schedule it and put it on the books. And so, yeah, we just needed to schedule a time and actually do it. And I think it so happened that there wasn't like a guest spot this week, so it worked out nicely. And I would be happy to come back at future times because, yeah, I don't get to argue with people enough anymore. Like, my partner and I are trying not to argue as much anymore, and that kind of means that there's an area in my life that I'm trying to fill, and usually it's on Twitter, arguing against TERFs, but this is so much more visceral.
Oh, yeah. I've actually intentionally given up arguing on Twitter and exclusively been like, if you want to argue with me, I will do that, but it's gonna be here.
I want to make money off of it.
Yeah. Right. I'm gonna be fucking paid for my time.
For sure.
Yeah, but thank you, Kelsey. Love the lo-fi vibes. £5 from Samantha Patrick. Hashtag Team Arden. Hashtag Team Lux. $5.
I don't know what that
is.
You can't vote for both. What is this? That's not how it's
Nullified.
ever
Come
worked.
on. We don't support teamwork here. I want to topple the opposition. That is the only way.
It's just, I don't know, people making up rules. You get one vote.
Shame. $9.99. Thank you so much, The Squirrel Nest HH. Someone who follows me from the Bird app on the line, followed by a celebrity, hashtag Team Luxander, squirrel emoji, purple heart emoji. I love the purple heart emoji. I feel like as a queer person, you pick a colored heart and it usually isn't the red one and you just like use that one all the time. And it's the purple one for me for sure.
Absolutely. Same. Yeah, no, the purple one's definitely the LGBT heart. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where it's at for sure. Thank you so much, Squirrel Nest, for following me on Twitter and for being here.
$10 from Madison. Thanks for the show. Lex, you were great, and I hope you come back soon, but I simply have to cast my vote for our beloved favorite of the show, Arden Hart. Hashtag Team Arden. Thank you so much, Madison. I appreciate it. There's a lot more than me to love on this show, so if I'm your favorite, that means a whole lot. Because I do like to be better than other people.
$5 from I Got Cookies. Thank you so much for the super chat. Why is Lux not a regular guest, and why has it taken so long to get them on? Go fuck yourself, Jimmy, for real. For that, hashtag Team Lux. Good job today. Listen, it's my fault.
True.
I mean, it's kind of both of us, yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's been a long time coming. We should do it more often.
I agree. Get you back on soon. I know we've got some open spots over the next couple of months, so we'll find a time to get you in there.
Heck yeah.
$4.99 from Nuzzy D. That almost sounds lewd. Hashtag Team Luxander. Sorry, Arden. Great show, y'all. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. No apologies necessary. Luxander is awesome. He definitely deserves votes.
I get to steal one, the one show, the one time I'm here. Like you get the opportunity every week.
Exactly. It's true. No, it's true.
$5 from Aubrey. Thank you so much. Hashtag Team Lux. My new GF says she can self-lubricate very well, and I shouldn't worry about bringing anything. But since she transitioned from Evie, she's B. I think that one got maybe cut off a little bit. You should always bring lubrication. It doesn't matter if you have a neo vagina or a one that you were born with. Everybody needs extra lube sometimes.
Yeah, lube is never gonna make it worse. Or well, I guess it could if you use
there is a saturation point.
But, yeah, but like it's almost always gonna help. I thank you so much.
You don't want
Aubrey.
the friction burns.
I wonder if there's like a part 2 to this. Oh, not yet. $5 from Panda. Great show tonight. Welcome to the Line family. Hashtag Team Lex. There we go. Now we're dead even.
True. Yeah, let's see how it goes from here.
Get the punishment. You gotta remember, guys, we gotta get to 25 votes to get us to do the punishment. So if you want to watch one of us eat a fucking super spicy pepper, that's your method.
I don't want to sound authoritarian. I don't want anyone to worry that I'm going full fash, but we're not prepared to welcome Lux to the Line family until Lux has done a call with either Wes or Emmanuel. Those
I have to take on one of the regulars.
But like one of the regular monsters.
Yeah. We got to enter the Thunderdome.
Yeah. There's still some passage rights that have yet to be met, but sorry.
That just sounds exciting to me. I don't know what's happened to me as a human being. I'm like, yeah, let's fight.
Have you heard of Wes call yet?
I think I may have. Like, I don't listen to the show very often, but I listened to one a couple months ago, and I was like, this is like this show's Haymitch, right?
For
man,
sure. I forgot about Haymitch.
Throwback.
Haymitch is Walking Dead, right?
No,
that was from
Haymitch
Talk
was
Heathen
from
back in the
Talk
day.
Heathen. Yeah.
Oh, right.
He was
Okay,
like
okay.
the one who constantly called in when EJ was on the show to talk about pronouns and non-binary people and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they just knew every time he came on, they were like, God damn it, it's Hamish again.
Hamish has never called this show. What a disappointment.
I know, he missed out.
Yeah.
No, he came out of his egg finally, probably was happened. I don't know.
That's a good conspiracy.
Yeah.
I don't
know whose turn
who
it
did
is.
the last one. Nope, me either. I'll
I
do
don't
it.
know.
$5
I'll
from
take it
James
anyway.
Call.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Hashtag Team
I was like,
sorry, love
it has my
today.
name in it.
You're right. I'm sorry.
gosh.
I was too fast. This is my male socialization showing.
I'm not allowed to make that joke, but you went there, and that's why I laughed so hard, because I thought of it, and I was like, I can't say that.
I love to make the trans jokes. It's really fun, especially with Matt, because like he tries to be really careful to be like, you know, not. He's like, I can't talk about that kind of stuff, but I love to make those jokes in a way that makes them really uncomfortable all the time, and it's really funny to me.
Oh, for sure. Oh man. $5 from Domestic. Thank you so much for the super chat. Luxander was wonderful. Hashtag Team Lux. We're lighting it up today. Absolutely.
There you go, taking the lead, swooping in.
I just had like the biggest brain fart. You ever just have those moments where you're just like, I just lost my full identity and don't know what I'm doing or who I am. It was short, but boy, I just locked up. I was like, shit, what do I do next again? There you go.
Oh boy.
$5 from Larry Fishman. Pronouns are hard and I refuse to use them. That guy, Arden banned. Hashtag weaponize incompetence. Hashtag Team Luxander. Yeah, I mean,
What a dickbag.
yeah, he's just that's all there is to say. Yeah, what a dickbag.
Did y'all see
Put a
who
little
took
cap
the
on it.
lead?
That's it. Oh yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah,
I'm
no,
really
less-
3 ahead
less
now.
than me now.
Nice. I have no idea what that currency is. SEK, we got
Swedish
129
kronas?
of those. Swedish monies. Thank you for 129 of those from S. Martique. Great show tonight. Hashtag Team Lux. Yes, I love how the picture that you have on your profile picture kind of looks like the skeleton of an isopod. If they had skeletons,
Ooh.
that's nifty.
Yeah. We have a bunch of isopods too downstairs. We try to cultivate them because they eat poop. And so you don't have to clean your cage as much if you have isopods in the enclosure. Also, these are Swedish kronas, but we call them sex because that's funny.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I have 3
129?
containers with isopods in them. They are not like for anything right now. They're not like in a terrarium, do anything. I like possess them for the sake of possessing them. So that's a fun low-key hobby that I can ignore for a week at a time.
Oh yeah, they're super cool. We've got our best flourishing colony. It was one that we were told was a species that was not going to reproduce as easily. So like also the ones that are supposedly the easiest to reproduce, we've actually had a hard time with. So I'm like, that's so weird. But anyway, yeah, we have like red lavas. They're like red with these big black splotches and they're pretty big. Oh
Yeah. Oh, those are gorgeous. And yeah, those rarer types, they tend to be like, you always hear, they don't reproduce as well. But I bet that you guys just have like your temperature and humidity levels because you have so many other terraria. That's probably like contributing to their growth. That's cool though. You could sell those big time.
We definitely plan to do that at like expos and stuff, like with animals. Like here's a starter colony, so you can like eventually have those. Yeah.
2 things.
Cool.
Luxander won the live chat vote. Usually I give warning that it's going to be closing, but Luxander had 69% of the vote, and I felt that should mean an automatic win.
Yeah,
true.
I think that counts. Yeah.
Nice.
And then, never mind. The second thing I was going to say, I just realized nobody cares about but me. All right, moving on. Oh, let me give Lux that vote for the chat vote. Cool.
Very close to hitting enough votes. $4.99 from Claire. I can't find a way to trick YouTube into letting me say what I want Jimmy to do to himself. So go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Hashtag Team Arden. Seems like you found a very common way that has been used a lot. Did like YouTube update their like TOS for super chats or something? Because it feels like
There's been a couple comments up to that effect today. Yeah.
You just can't say fuck unless you're a mod in a super chat.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough.
That's funny.
Or maybe Claire wants me to do something other than go fuck myself, and it's very graphic. Might,
Detailed.
yeah. Might include some words that are universally condemned.
$5 dono from Aubrey. Thank you so much. Since her transition from Eevee, she's been a good Vaporeon, and I don't want to lose her. I think that's the follow-up from earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
okay.
good Vaporeon. Wow, Vaporeon is such a good Pokemon. If you want to choose to be a Pokemon, like, man, that's a really solid choice.
There's a copy pasta that kind of ruins it.
Well, I don't know that
just 'cause
thing. So
I'm going to show you after.
apparently Vaporeon is the most breedable Pokemon. Is
Yes.
what this is a
of
reference
course she
to.
is. Yeah. It's clearly one of the most fuckable Pokemon.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Like,
the one that
obviously.
the one that. Do you know the copy pasta? Are you not aware?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know.
It's a script they put into like deep fakes and stuff. So there's like one of Tucker Carlson, but also Biden and a bunch of other people, and they're like, Vaporeon is the most breedable Pokemon. Belongs to the egg group, whatever, and and natural lubricant. It's pretty. You couldn't put it in a super chat. I'll tell you that much.
Also, its access to acid armor makes it, what was it, like sustainable for a rough handling or something like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Pokemon Smasher pass when?
No. Pass.
The line Smasher pass Pokemon. It's like a team thing. That would be funny. That would be funny, like group thing to do.
I'm gonna
but
do a
it's
Smasher
also like
pass on Smasher passes. So it's like
just gonna pass.
Yeah. Pokemon Smasher pass. Pass.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
I don't know who this one is. I don't remember.
I think this one's for you.
Okay, £5 from Samantha Patrick, #team Arden. Thank you, Samantha. Samantha single-handedly has gotten me to win multiple times. Thank you, Samantha, the most valiant soldier in my army. I appreciate you.
Appreciate the support, whatever it takes.
Oh, did we?
Oh, it's 25 total.
For somebody.
Currently, I'm primed.
Yeah.
To eat the pepper. Usually we do if we get 50 super chats, 50 votes. Then both of us have to do it. And then it's just about honor, who wins. But
yeah, I will say I actually
cool.
if I can start shifting the thing here and be unfair, Lux has expressed hating habaneros, and we've got no.
I think they taste awful.
Yeah. What about?
I just thought like a punishment, and that was the first thing that came to mind.
Arden, how do you feel about
That's a good one.
habaneros?
I don't think I've ever just eaten a straight habanero. I mean, I like spice to a certain degree. So I feel like the spicy part is less of my concern as much as actually eating a whole fucking pepper.
Yeah.
But
it is also going to derail 10 minutes of the show. For sure.
It sounds like either will be entertaining then, I guess so. I won't try.
I'm not Ben. I'm not going to have a soulless look in my eye while I eat the rind of a lemon. Don't worry.
This is a separate one, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So this is £5 from Samantha again. Samantha Patrick, Team Lux. Is that a different Samantha? The other one was a different Samantha?
No, they're both
two
same.
Samanthas.
Samantha.
The Samantha.
Oh, okay. No, we're just
Samantha's Arden loyalty.
You're playing both sides.
That's right.
That's right.
And telling
Samantha
us.
knows that if they send a super chat that is #Team Arden, #Team Lux, it won't give a point to anyone. So they're sending individuals to fluff the score.
Oh yeah, instead of negating their vote out, yeah.
Yeah. $4.99 from Nuzzy D. Even though the guild is on strike, I'll give y'all these for my money. #Totes Totalitarian, #Cheeto Gum Guzzlers, Cheeto Chum Guzzlers, #Neo Nancy's.
That's terrible.
Man, I had a hard time following that one. So cheese guzzler was a thing from an episode I did with Josie where next time she's on, we have to guzzle vegan cheese together because we both lost, or we hit 50 votes.
Vegan cheese sauce.
Cheeto Chum Guzzler? I don't know what the chum is.
Cheeto
Chum is like chopped up fish parts.
Yeah.
Why is that in there? What the
Maybe
fuck?
Cheeto
That
know.
would actually be torture for me. I hate fish most of the
Cheeto
time.
might refer to Trump, and then it's Trump Chum Guzzle. I don't know.
I don't want to.
That sounds dirty. I don't want to be involved. No, thank you.
I do like #Neo Nancy's. I feel like that would go well with #Fashly.
Yes, true.
For
yeah.
real?
$5. Thank you so much, Stephanie Helms. Fuck go yourself, Jimmy. Well, okay, so she must be a mod. They must be a mod.
Yeah.
If they can put the word fuck. Okay. It's inconsistent.
Yeah.
Come on, YouTube, get it
Is
together.
that the last one?
Yeah, I think it's over.
So it's official. I will have to eat a habanero. On the next episode, we have Lux on, which will probably be sooner than later, since I think you did outstanding and you had fun. I had a great time. The audience loves you, so we'll definitely get you back on soon. So I have to do my hostly responsibilities here. I want to, as always, thank the mods. You guys do so much work in the chat during the show. Thank you guys for everything that you do. And thanks, Critical Cupcake, for stepping up to call screen when we didn't have a call screener today. That is huge. Also, I see Ari Turner sent $10. First time catching the show. Great to catch the show from your local NB. Thank you, Ari Turner. Yay. Then I also want to remind people again that we do have a Patreon. That is a huge, very supportive, very helpful way to support the show and everyone on here. So if you can support us there, if you're financially able to do that, we would really greatly appreciate it. But then I want to let Lex, if you want to plug your stuff before we wrap up the show, now is a good time to. Oh, we got another one.
There's one more super chat.
Not this one. Yep. Not the. Sometimes it takes a while after you load it up to send it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
$5 from Melissa Nguyen. I wonder if it's true that saying fuck too soon on YouTube, it gets demonetized. By the way, hashtag Team Felines equals whoever has a cat. So coin toss?
Yes, it is true, by the way. Sometimes it can be lost in other audio and it won't be sure you said fuck, so the robot won't do it automatically. But then upon manual review, anytime you get a manual review, they do check the beginning. Anyway,
if it's in like the first minute,
we gave the last feline one to Arden, so we'll give this one to Lex.
Fair. All right, so Lex, if you want to plug your stuff, tell people where to find you and all that, please do that.
I'm Luxander. That's you can find me at the channel called Luxander. I have a website. It's luxander.net, and I do live shows on my channel 3 times a week. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Times on that, like usually in the evening on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then usually at like noon on Sunday. We talk about all kinds of stuff. The ongoing fascism coming from Florida, trans surgeries and stuff. We like to go into like hardcore info dumping modes on things like that. And we also try to take time to just talk about sort of whatever, maybe do a little gaming now and then, kind of share like tips and support for what to do if you're in like a tough situation, like all kinds of different stuff, mental health, religion occasionally, since my background is sort of in that skeptic atheist space. So the easiest place to find me and all my socials and everything is just on luxander.net. And I'm going to be going live on my show probably in about an hour. So if anybody's here and you want to come hang out in an hour, hit up that website where I got the custom emojis. Direct support through the website means that you don't have 30% of your money stolen by YouTube when you super chat. So thank you for having me. I've really, really, really had fun.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad. So definitely go check out that stuff, because obviously you guys love them. So go watch the rest of their stuff. Go watch that show later. But with that, everybody, this has been the Transatlantic Call-In Show. Thank you guys so much for showing up, and we will see you all back here again next week. Bye.